Hi everyone, welcome to Cosmic Comics. This is the Friday Night Magic on May 9th. It's the 9th, right?
Yes, I believe so. It's the 9th.
Alright, as opposed to last week, we're going Constructed. I'm Brad McCarter. With me is
Logan Ridge.
Logan Ridge, who's been participating in our Friday Night Magics about twice a month for the last...
What, 3 months?
3 months? And I really... It's a thrill for me to see the quality of this guy's deck increase every week. I've been excited to see him growing up, learning what the cards do and how to play Magic. So now I'm real excited to see what he can bring to the commentary table.
Yep, me too.
All right, well, we're going to jump right into it. Our round 2 matchup is between Pannu and Jagjit. Jagjit, I believe this is his first time here, and
Yes.
He's running a green-black Constellation Dredge deck. And Jaws is playing the blue-white-red deck that we saw him running 2 weeks ago. So that deck is all card draw, counter spells. He pretty much never likes to tap out on his turn.
Yes.
Whereas Jagjit is playing powerful creatures at sorcery speed. He's got a Satyr Wayfinder, which is going to put 2 creatures in his graveyard right away and put another land in his hand. Jaws plays a shock untapped, taking the 2 damage, so he's showing counter mana. At this point, it's either going to be Syncopate or Is It Charm that he has available.
Commune of the Gods.
Commune with the Gods. So let's look at the top 5 cards.
Yep.
Reveal a creature or enchantment from among them, put it into your hand, the rest goes into your graveyard.
Yep.
I think that's Grizzly Salvage that there's 2 of. Dictative Kruvix, not Dictate. Whatever the one that lets him look at the top 6 cards. So I'm not sure how many creatures.
For what?
Not sure how many creatures that put in his graveyard. So what's kind of interesting is we saw Jaws take the shock last turn and then not counter the spell. So he decided Commune with the Gods just isn't important.
Yeah.
Jagjit's at 4 mana, and that's when his deck starts to do powerful things, but all his powerful things cost double black. That would be either Gerard or Night Howler. So instead we see the Lotleth Troll, which is good against Jaws' deck because it's resilient to Supreme Verdict. Jaws hits its 4th land drop, so this means he can be playing Rouse Eric, he can be playing Supreme Verdict, Detention Sphere, or more likely, given his style, he'll just pass the turn here and leave all his mana up. He opts to War Leader's Helix, the Lotleth Troll, while the Regeneration mana, the black mana, is not up.
Which then puts him at 21 life.
Puts him at 21, but he's tapped out. So there's that double black. So if we slam a Night Howler or a Gerard, it's going to be at least +4/+4. Instead, we see another Lotleth Troll, this time with Regeneration mana to back him up. That's it's a Strength of the Fallen. It's an enchantment that says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard. And then the Wayfinder attacks for 5, so it appears he has 4 creatures in his graveyard. Jaws has to decide how much mana he's willing to dedicate at sorcery speed to dealing with the Lotleth Troll. He decides none.
He plays his 5th land.
So at 5 mana, we're seeing Turn and Burn, War Leader's Helix, and then the same suite of counter spells that he typically has available to him, which is It Charm, Counterflux, Syncopate. That's Grim Guardian. It's a 1/4 enchantment with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, target player loses 1 life. So Jaws is going to prevent that from entering the battlefield.
Yep.
And Syncopate actually exiles, so that means he's not getting any more Strength of the Fallen fuel. Jagjit passes the turn without attacking. Jaws passes back 6 mana, choosing for the 6th to not enter tapped, which to me says he does not have a Sphinx's Revelation in hand. Or if he does, he plans on destroying a creature first.
Night Howler.
That's the Night Howler, which is a +4/+4. It costs the double black, which means Lot Left Troll is not going to have regenerate mana, and Night Howler does not resolve. So right now, if Jaws gets to slam a Supreme Verdict, which it appears he has in his hand, then Jagjit has no way to protect his board, and it'll be a pretty commanding position for the blue-white-red control deck. There's the Supreme Verdict. He has only 2 mana up, which means some powerful spell like Nemesis of Mortals, for example, would resolve with no problem. Of course, Jaws built the deck that Jagjit is playing, which means you never know what gigantic aces he would hide in there. A Primeval Bounty might slip by right now, for example.
Yes. There's another Night Howler.
And this one is a lowly 7/7? Maybe it's an 8/8? And when it enters the battlefield, it gives itself +7/+7 until end of turn. That would be really swell if he had a Xenagos in play. He just attacks for 28?
Yeah.
There's a counter. It looks like it's on 7. It was nice of them to give us that. Supreme Verdict. I think that's going to be the only way that Jaws can answer these 7/7s is with counterspells, Supreme Verdicts, or Detention Spheres. Jagjit has the ability to play up to 8 in his deck. So if he just slams 1 or 2 more in a row, that might actually win him the match. Or the game, at least. Because now we see there's an Izzet Charm in Jaws' hand, and I don't know what that Izzet Charm is going to be able to do this game. Kill a Wayfinder, I suppose.
Jaws with 6 mana, using 4 for Jace.
Puts it straight at 2, looks at the top 4 cards. One of them is Steam Augury, which he had just scryed and left on top. So he sees Steam Augury, Mizia Mortars, and Hallowed Fountain. Jaws will take the draw spell. So between Steam Augury and Jace, Jaws' deck is very good at getting a high volume of cards in his hand, although not always exactly the cards he might want. Which, as he says, when everything you're playing is a bunch of answers, it doesn't matter. He's not afraid of binning all of his Elspeths, because he's got perhaps enough Rouse Erics and Mutavaults to win through the Elspeth, or maybe he just has no fear. So Jagjit plays a land, he scries, and he passes the turn, which is really, really bad at this point. He doesn't have any gas in play, so Jaws is going to spend his next however many turns drawing cards. Here he's casting the Steam Augury, revealing Rouse Eric and Izzet Charm as spells in 3 lands. Looks like Jagjit is giving him the Izzet Charm. So probably cast that now and just draw cards. There you go. So that's the draw 2, then discard 2 mode of that spell. Now he untaps with a Planeswalker and 8 mana against an empty board. Draws more cards, revealing Revelation, Elspeth.
Either way, he's getting a Revelation.
Absolutely. He's getting Revelation and an Elspeth. Which one do you play now?
If it was me, I'd play Elspeth first.
Jagjit's done nothing for 2 turns, so
Hopefully he can pull something out.
it should be assumed he has either 1 or 0 spells in his hand. So pretty much nothing he can play and draw right now would beat an Elspeth, as far as I can tell.
Although it was Jaws who built this deck.
Sphinx's Revelation for 6. Jaws continues on the I'm never going to tap mana during my main phases game plan. So he'll draw up to, I have no idea, 10, 11 cards in hand?
Looks that way.
He'll play a land, hopefully slam an Elspeth, keep up a counterflux, and then discard.
Plays land, scries on the bottom.
So here Jaws gets to decide, how do I want to kill him?
Yep.
And just by the unfortunate nature of this blue-white-red control deck, the answer tends to be slowly. Tapping 5, there's 6 mana for the Elspeth.
Plus 1 to get those 3 1/1 soldier tokens.
And he's keeping up blue, blue, red, so even if Jagjit has a Hero's Downfall, it's not going to resolve. Jaws discards 4 cards to get down to 7. There's another land off the top of Jagjit's deck.
Still 1 card in hand.
It's probably a spell, because he didn't just pass the turn. Which means it may be the Hero's Downfall, and he's gonna hope that Jaws taps his mana.
I don't think that Jaws would be that confident that he doesn't have a Hero's Downfall in his hand.
He drops the Detention Spear on the Strength of the Fallen, because might as well. And he attacks with 1 Mutavault and 3 Soldier Tokens, sending Jagjit down to 5 and makes 3 more dudes. Eidolon of Blossoms comes down for Jagjit. So that's the new, it's a 4 mana 2/2 Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So here he could go off, assuming Jaws doesn't have any counterspells, which wasn't a safe assumption to begin with, but when he got Eidolon of Blossom through, perhaps, just perhaps, he'd make it there. He draws Immortal Servitude. And Jaws doesn't even wait to see how much it's for. It's just, nope. But it was for 3, which would get a pair of Night Howlers into the graveyard. Or from the graveyard. Which, since it doesn't provide trample, would actually do that much to get through Elspeth's army.
Yeah.
Elspeth's ultimate is -7. You get an emblem which says creatures you control get +2/+2 in flying. So if he ticks it up to 7 here and he has 9 dudes, then when he ultimates Elspeth, he'll be able to swing for 18 and end the game on the spot. However, this turn he can swing for 10, so it won't even require the ultimate to end the game.
There's that to 7. Plus 1 to 7. Swings for 6.
Swings for 6.
Puts him at 9.
Chooses not to activate Jace, which, fair enough.
Another land.
Another land, and he
And he
says,
scoots.
nope, that was fun, let's go to game 2. So there you see blue-white red control. You don't pressure them early, they get to play their counter spells, they get to wrath the board, and Sphinx's Revelation wraps up the game.
Yep. It's a pretty quick deck.
Yep. So, what do you bring in if you're the Dredge deck? We need to deal with Detention Sphere. We need to deal with Elspeth. Are there any enchantment or graveyard-based cards that deal with that in green and black?
Not that I can think of. There is a card, but I don't remember if it is in standard. Death Denied?
I'm not familiar with Death Denied.
It's a...
Return X target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. That card is not in standard.
Okay, so no, I can't think of anything that would...
So what he's playing instead of Death Denied is the Immortal Servitude, the black X. Return any number of creatures converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is fabulous and can absolutely end the game if you can get it to resolve.
Yes.
But since he's trying to do it for 3 most of the time, that costs 6 mana.
Yeah. But with Jaw's deck, it's kind of hard to play a spell without it being countered.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Jaws has a lot of counter spells in that deck. It's part of the reason why it's control.
Yeah, he has 8, maybe 10 in his main board.
Yeah.
And who knows if he's bringing in more. My hunch is actually that he's not, but I don't know that for certain.
Yeah.
Shall we see game 2?
Yeah.
So this game was actually really unfortunate because Jagjit mulliganed to 5. Which, when you need to aggressively resolve your spells to make your opponent play at sorcery speed and then punish them with a Night Howler or some monster after that, it's a lot harder to do when you're
Only playing with 5.
missing your second land drop.
Yeah.
Hits that land off the top, gets a lot left troll. So my hunch is that's going to die to an Izzet Charm. It doesn't, again. Again, Jaws shocks himself on turn 2 and then doesn't use the mana. He has the Azorius Charm to put lot left troll on top of the library. Which means, guess what, Jagjit? You're not drawing a land next turn. There's another troll, which is actually the kind of card that could beat Jaws if he doesn't have an answer for it fast enough. Because it has Regeneration, it has Trample, and Jagjit might just dump 3 cards from his hand right now and say, it's 5 power. Is that going to get me there?
Maybe.
Looks like he doesn't do that this turn.
Jaws takes the damage.
Jaws thinks about trying to deal with the creature, opts not to.
And he pulls out another one. That one does not resolve.
It does. That's actually a Steam Augury, not a Counterflux.
Okay.
So Jagjit says, I don't really care what you're doing, I'm going to draw some cards. I'm sorry, Jaws says, I don't care what you're doing, I'm going to draw some cards. Revelation in one pile, Elspeth in the next.
He's gonna let him have the... Oh, he lets him have the Elspeth.
Oh, no, you send that to the graveyard.
Oh.
So, if you're Jaws and you just don't care about that lot left troll, it probably means you have a Supreme Verdict this turn?
Yes.
Or, heaven forbid, a Detention Sphere. And that's a Detention Sphere. So, on the list of ways you don't come back from mulliganing 5, it's getting both your lot left trolls hit with 1 sphere.
Yeah.
So we see a negate in Jaws' hand. We know he has the Revelation in his hand.
There's the Temple of
Enlightenment.
Sky. Keeps it on top.
So what do you keep on top? Lands? Probably a land?
Land or, well, let's see here.
Oh, it looks like it was a Syncopate, which is fair enough, because Jaws, you know, doesn't need to tap mana on his turn for the rest of the game.
Let's try again.
There's Jagjit continuing to have two lands in
lands.
play. And this is exactly the situation where Satyr Wayfinder pulls his weight. Because he'll find you a land, and he's some dude, I guess.
Yeah.
Grizzly Salvage. Get syncopated, but perhaps that will give Jagjit the opportunity to resolve a spell this turn.
There's his third land.
Unfortunately, Night Howler would die here because the lot less trolls didn't go to the graveyard. So instead he played Nyx Weaver, which is an exciting addition to this deck. It's the 3-mana 2/3 reach enchantment creature, spider. At the beginning of your upkeep, you mill 2 cards, and you can pay 3 mana and exile Nyx Weaver to return a card from your graveyard to your hand.
It's pretty fun to play in a mono black deck.
It's actually green-black.
So green-black can be really good with a lot of those.
Yeah, and it's somewhat of a tutor because when you put stuff in your graveyard, you get to find what you want later. But you know what's also somewhat of a tutor is drawing 5 cards at the end of your opponent's turn, which Jaws opted to do.
Yeah.
So we see he's got Mizium Orders in his hand. It looks like there's another Revelation in his hand. There's a Negate. So he Mortars the Weaver. Man, I had no idea that Jaws had so many sorceries in his deck.
Yeah.
Uses 1 Mutavault to animate the other and attacks for 2. So he has 3 Mutavaults in play, which actually means it's only going to be 3 swings before he eliminates his opponent. He discards 1 card to go down to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He has 9 lands in play. So if he plays his 10th and uses 6 of them to attack, then he has 4 mana to counter spells.
There's a Night Howler.
Night Howler resolves, and it's a 1/1, I believe. Maybe that's a 2/2. What's underneath that?
I believe it's a 2/2. Yeah, it's a 2/2.
Okay, what other creature died? Do you remember?
It was the other spider.
Were there 2 spiders?
Yeah, there were 2 spiders.
One got countered, one got destroyed?
Yeah, one got countered, one got destroyed.
Okay. I have no idea what that card is. Could it be Thassazyre or the blue font? We can't even look it up. We have no idea what that card is. Well, either way, he tries to resolve Strength of the Fallen. It doesn't get by, it gets negated. And yes, it was in fact Font of Fortunes. So Jaws cracks it there to draw 2 cards. So neat, he's playing 4 mana Divinations in his deck. Of course, the advantage of the 4 mana Divination is it's 2 mana now, 2 mana later, which makes it much easier to play when you're trying to keep up counterflux. Well, this is excellent. I was afraid that Jaws' deck wouldn't have enough ways to draw cards.
Never want to underestimate Jaws.
So
you do that and you lose the game.
he plays a land, he attacks for 2. The 2/2 Night Howler is going to continue to exist. But Jaws is at a healthy 23 life, so he's safe to take several hits before he's going to be really threatened by that card.
Yes. And it looks like the Night Howler is a 3/3 right now.
So there's the whatever it's called of Crewfix. Look at the top 3 cards, or look at the top 6, and you can take up to 3 enchantments and put them into your hand. Rest go into your graveyard. So this can find Night Howlers, Heralds of Torment, which we haven't seen. We're not actually sure if that's in his deck. Strength of the Fallen.
It looks like it resolves.
I don't think it does.
Maybe?
He hasn't started flipping yet. Okay, it does.
Okay, it resolves.
Looking at the top 6, we've got a Nyx Weaver, we've got an Immortal Servitude, we've got a Grim Guardian, we've got 4 lands. Which means he gets 2 creatures in his hand, no creatures in his graveyard, and he doesn't hit another land.
Which at this point, I think he needs the lands.
Yeah, what I think is going to happen is Jagjit's going to run 1 creature each turn into a counterspell, and Jaws is going to beat down with some Mutavaults. So Jaws untaps with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 mana. Has not played his land yet for the turn. And it looks like he's going to attack with 2 Mutavaults. Jagjit will try to block one of them, and he will get his Night Howler put back on top of his library, which continues the get 1 creature countered until the game ends plan.
Yeah, and he yet again will not draw a land.
You will not draw a land. That's the hidden power of Azorius Charm, is when your opponent needs to draw lands and you put creatures on top of their library, creatures aren't lands. Unless they're Dryad Arbor.
Yes.
Grim Guardians enter the battlefield. Trigger sends Jaws back down to 20, so he's starting to look nervous. He has 12 lands in play.
13.
And that's got to be telegraphing a Sphinx's Revelation, right?
Yeah.
Nyx Weaver, the 2/3 that we saw earlier.
Yep. And he finally got that 4th land out.
And entering the battlefield triggers Constellation, sends Jaws down to 17, and there's a Revelation for, I believe, 10. Yeah, 10. So he's at 27. He'll draw up to 16 cards in the hand, I believe. Draw up to 17. Play as many things as he deems fit, and then discards have his hand. He untaps 13 lands in play. I suspect the 14th one will be played this turn. There's the 4th Mutavault. So that means he has 8 power and lands available each turn. Four mana Supreme Verdict. So something worth noting is Jagjit now has a healthy number of creatures in his graveyard. And as facetious as that might sound, that means Night Howler and Gerard suddenly become cards that are worth drawing. Except Gerard costs double green to cast, and Jagjit only has a single green in play. Looks like someone rolled a 7, and Jaws had more than 7 cards in his hand, so you have to discard half of it. That's a Settlers of Catan reference. So he's revealing the cards he's discarding as he Temple of Triumph, some red cards underneath it, Museum Orders, Is It Charm, and a bunch of lands.
Looks like it.
So he Supreme Verdict, and he attacked with 3 Mutavaults, which leaves him only 4 mana in play. Another green source enters for Jagjit, so that turns on potentially Gerard. I'm not sure if he has any other green.
There's that now Night Howler.
And Night Howler now is a 5/5, perhaps a 6/6. It's now a relevant card. Supreme Verdict away the Night Howler. Pick up your 4 Mutavaults. See your opponent's life total at 8. Tap some mana, tap some lands, and that's going to be lethal. So in Jagjit's first time here at our FNM, he won his first match, but he had the unfortunate luck of getting paired against Jaws in round 2. And when we're trying to answer the question, how do you beat the blue-white-red control deck, the answer is not mulligan to 5.
Yeah. Mulliganing to 5 does not work for this deck.
Yes, and there's definitely a reason that we see Jaws consistently playing in the top tables.
Yes.
He's no doubt a shoo-in every month to appear in the Bellingham City Champs tournament,
Yes.
which in fact this month is occurring on the 17th?
Yeah, 7.
17th, yeah. There was some word that it was going to be on the 10th, but that was not entirely in agreement, and after talking with the other stores, we figured out an overwhelming majority of our player base believed that the tournament was going to be on the 17th, so we're opting to make them correct.
Yes.
So that'll be 8 days from now, and it's $10 to enter. It starts at noon. It's here at Cosmic Comics this month, which means it will be streamed live. Well, it will be streamed with the typical amount of delay, which is a round or 2.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to go into round 3.
Yep.
So this round we're seeing Baldeep, Jaws' brother and Jagjit's cousin, playing against Dane. And Dane is playing his typical mono-green monsters. Starts with an Elvish Mystic, which is one of his 2 1-drops, but either way he's playing a 1-drop. And Baldeep's got Brain Maggots, which might be really good against Dane. Dane doesn't have a whole lot of ways to get rid of it. That's the new Mesmeric Fiend. So he'll exile a card from Dane's hand with Brain Maggots, and if Brain Maggots dies, Dane gets the card back. So Dane reveals a Tusker, a bunch of mana dudes, and a Boon Satyr.
So, the maggots are kind of like Night Howler. Not Night Howler, Night Veil Spectre. Where whenever it deals combat damage, you get the top.
No, it's not combat damage. It's when it enters the battlefield, you take something from your opponent's hand, not from their deck. And your opponent gets it back if the creature dies. So it's sort of like a Thoughtseize on a creature. We have Tide Hollow Scholar, seeing a little bit of play in Modern, has a very similar effect. And I reference Mesmeric Fiend from who knows what old set, because it was the original of that effect.
Yeah.
So we had there, Dane played Burning Tree Emissary into Colonian Tusker, and the Tusker eats a Bile Blade. So here Dane plays the Nykthos, but he only has 3 devotion, which means he still only has 4 mana. Dane throws his guys into the red zone. Baldeep wants to keep that Boon Satyr off the battlefield, so he doesn't block, and Dane throws down some more mana dudes. Now he's at more than 3 devotion, so his Nykthos will ramp him, so he's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana next turn if he does not play a land. So his deck is playing Mistcutter Hydras, Polucranoses, probably 6 mana Garruk. So he definitely has ways to make use of the now 9 mana that he has in play. But he sees Baldeep's 3 mana, including 2 black, 2 blue, and 2 white. So he has to decide what it is he's going to play around. Perhaps Hero's Downfall or Dissolve could be rearing its ugly head here. Counts his devotion, sees that it's at 5. He's in the tank. If he's thinking about playing Garruk, that would be unfortunate to play into Dissolve. If he's thinking about playing and monster-seeing a Polukranos, then that would be dangerous if he's playing into a Hero's Downfall. I think that Baldeep's deck plays at mostly sorcery speed. I don't expect to see a dissolve from him, but stranger things have happened. So Dane will add 5 mana to his mana pool. He'll play the Pelucranos, so he has 1 floating, which means he has 5 mana available if you include the one that's floating. Considers monstrosing the Pelucranos, but sees how bad that is if it gets hit with a terror. He goes for it. He adds 3 mana to his mana pool, which is enough to monstrous for 1. Yeah, and he monstroses the Pelucranos, targeting the Brain Maggots, and gets no response. Boon Satyr comes back into hand. Into the red zone comes crashing 4, and he's got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14 power available to attack next turn. So Baldeep needs to draw something right now in order to have a real chance of this. He scries. What he sees isn't good enough, and he picks up his cards. So, green monsters.
Pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
It's like in white aggro deck, except with green.
Exactly, and he only had the one Burning Tree Emissary that game. But you get to see him every once in a while play an absurd number of Burning Tree Emissaries, and
I've had many a time where I've played 3 Burning Tree Emissaries in a row, each one leading into the other one.
Have you ever done that with a Nykthos in play?
No.
No. Well, I have seen Dane do that from time to time. I believe I heard a story once. I didn't see this, so don't quote me on this. I'm not even sure it was Dane, but I think that he once played a turn 2 Garruk and then -3'd it, putting a World Spine Worm into play.
Wow.
Which is quite powerful for type 2.
Yeah. And for turn 1 play?
Yeah, and the way you do that is you play an Elvish Mystic, and then on turn 2 you hit, I guess you have to hit triple Burning Tree Emissary into Nykthos. Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's exactly 8 cards. That's the perfect hand. I don't know if that's ever actually happened, but it's at least theoretically possible.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive. And much less impressive, but still pretty dang good, is the turn 1 Elvish Mystic into turn 2 Burning Tree Emissary Referent Hunter, which just makes a 5/5 on turn 2. You know, it's just a 5/5.
Yeah, no biggie.
So I'm excited to see what he does for this game.
Yes.
Ready to move forward?
Yeah.
So if you're Baldeep and you're playing black and you're against the green deck, I think your primary goal is sideboard in as many terrors as you can. Baldeep actually made the joke, I think you should be able to sideboard 8 Doomblades. There's turn 2 Burning Tree Emissary into Witch Stalker. So, Doomblade not very good against Witch Stalker, but acceptable against Burning Tree Emissary. Although he already missed the trigger, or probably more likely than he missed the trigger is he played Doomblade in response to the Witch Stalker.
Yes.
So that's going to be a lowly 3/3 hexproof. Dane untaps, has 4 mana in play, attacks for 4, so only has 3 mana available this turn, and opts not to play anything, which either means I don't have anything powerful to do this turn, or all I'm going to do is flash into Boon Satyr. Baldeep reads the bones, which means if it is a Boon Satyr coming down, he's going to get hit for 8 down to 6 before he gets to untap and play any creatures. He plays the temple, he sees the... who knows what he sees, and decides it's not good enough.
Well, he knows what he sees.
He does know what he sees. And when I asked Baldeep what he was playing before the tournament started, he said Orzhov 5-drops, so it probably is pretty important that he hits his 5th land drop.
Yes.
Which I assume means he's playing Bloodbaron of Vizkopas, Obsidats, and perhaps Archangel of Thune? Prognostic Sphinx. Dane crashes in for another 4 after playing an emissary, so he just gets to play dudes and attack, which is really powerful because Baldeep wants to develop his board, he wants to, I don't know, play giant creatures, but he has to deal with the fact that he's taking 4 damage every turn.
And he just got his 5th land.
But there's a Bremaz, which is a little bit bigger than anything that Dane has in play right now. Dane has 5 mana in play, which is enough to bestow a Boon Satyr, or play Pelucranos and attack with all his dudes. But attacking with all your dudes right now is not good if you don't have backup.
Yeah.
That's 5 mana for a Hunter's Prowess. You know what that card does?
I can't exactly remember it now.
Target creature gets +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. Draw a card for each damage it deals. So it hits for 6, and Dane is going to draw 6 cards. So that sends Baldeep down to 2. He still has his Bremaz in play. I don't know if he plays Verdict, but I sure hope he does. He Bile Blights
the Burning Tree Emissary.
Which means if Dane doesn't have anything, then the board's now stable. Unfortunately, Dane probably has a lot of things.
Baldeep plays the Ghost Council.
Which will send him up to 4, Dane down to 18.
There's that that cat token,
which will be a nice chump blocker later on. He's also getting in for 4 damage, so he's sending Dane down to 14, which is not irrelevant. Obsidat's the biggest thing on the battlefield, and it's going to be hitting for at least 2 a turn. Except that he opts not to exile it this turn, which makes sense, because that 5/5 blocker is real important for dealing with 3/3s or whatever other monsters Dane decides to bring to the battlefield. Dane has a full grip, so he's probably deciding exactly what degenerate thing do I want to do this turn. One important question is how many Burning Tree Emissaries does it start with? He's already seen 2, so there's a legitimate chance he hasn't drawn anymore.
But there is the chance that he has 1 in his hand, or both of the other 2 if he's running 4 in his hand.
And he's almost certainly running 4 in this deck.
Yeah. Then gives him the chance of going Burning Tree Emissary into Burning Tree Emissary into...
Nick those into whatever else he wants.
Yeah.
There's the Reverend Hunter. His devotion is 4, so that's a 3 mana 5/5. Which is a pretty efficient card.
Especially in a mono rune deck.
And then he pit fights the Reverend Hunter against the Bremaz. Baldeep untaps, he scries, he has 5 mana in play. His Obsidat is still tied for the largest thing on the battlefield, but he has to be feeling a lot less safe than he was a minute ago. Ooh, he plays the Underworld Queensmith, which is Constellation, gain 1 life. And then he Banishing Lights the Reverend Hunter to gain another life. Which means he feels comfortable enough bashing in with the Obsidat, which will send Dane down to 9, and he'll exile that at end of turn. Which means he's actually going to be making Dane chump block next turn. When Obsidat enters, Dane will go down to 7. If he attacks, it would send him down to 2, and then 2 activations of Queensmith would end the game.
let's see what Dane can pull out of his sleeve.
Now, all Dane has to do is leave a chump blocker back for Obsidat, and any pressure he puts on Baldeep does continue to be relevant. So there's the 3/3. He's going to opt to double block, which will get rid of his lethal damage next turn. Dane will not bestow a Boon Satyr at instant speed. Instead, he'll just play a 3/3 and a 5/5. Baldeep gets Obsidat back on the battlefield. We're at 7 to 8.
Dane goes down to 7.
That's a detention sphere for the 5/5, which means if you attack with Obsidat, Dane either has to chump block or kill Baldeep this turn. He'll Bioblight the Tusker, which means Dane doesn't get the chump block option. He's going to go down to 2, and Baldeep is going to flicker Obsidat. So your options are gain life right now, kill him right now, or go to game 3. And it looks like go to game 3 is the direction that we're going to take.
Yep.
So enough Bioblades, some Doomblades, and Banishing Lights, and the control deck seems to have a pretty decent chance.
Yeah.
It does still rack some nerves for his deck that your 5-drops are only as big as Dane's 3-drops, but they do have a lot more words on them. Dane's 3-mana 5/5s, that's all they are. They're just 5/5s.
Yeah.
Whereas Baldeep's 5/5s gain him life, destroy, chip away at Dane's life, and do bigger, swingier things.
They do quite more than Baldeep's.
So, are you familiar with the Coinsmith?
I am not familiar with the Coinsmith.
Let's find this Underworld Coinsmith. He's a 2-mana 2/2 enchantment, Constellation. Whenever he or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and you can pay black and white and pay 1 life to make each opponent lose 1 life. So the only enchantments that I know that we've seen in Baldeep's deck are Coinsmith and Vanishing Light. Do you remember any others?
No,
Yeah,
I don't.
Me neither. So the Coinsmith seems a curious addition to this deck. So I'd really like to see if he has some more enchantments to take advantage of that. However, I'll be the first person to tell you that 2-mana 2/2s are good enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Even if he's there exclusively for his activated Drain Life ability, then that's a creature.
That's a pretty good creature.
Alright, well they finished sideboarding, so we're going to go to game 3. Dane gets to be on the play this time, which will help facilitate his most degenerate draws. We know he has the Witch Stalker, so perhaps that makes Baldeep bring in Devour Fleshes. On the other hand, Devour Flesh can be pretty miserable against Elvish Mystics and Sylvan Caryatids. And there's the turn 1 Elvish Mystic, which he's had all 3 games now.
Yes.
Baldeep just scries and enjoys the card filtering. And now Dane is deciding how he wants to play this, which probably means that he has a Tusk. I have no idea. There are so many different things he could have.
Yeah.
He's probably trying to figure out how much he values attacking for 1, whether he's going to spend 2 mana or 3 mana this turn. There's the Burning Tree Emissary, so he still has all his options available to him. Unless you were going to play Triple Green Spell, but I'm not sure such a thing exists. Into an Elvish Mystic, and he attacks for 1. So that probably means he has the Reverend Hunter in hand, and he wants it to be bigger then bigger than a 5/5? Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't have the Reverend Hunter in his hand. Either way, there's the Coinsmith, which is going to be able to stonewall those Elvish Mystics if they decide to crash into the red zone, and it could potentially trade with Burning Tree Emissary, which helps get Dane's devotion down, so it is a useful play. There's
Boon Satyr on his Burning Tree Emissary.
So that's 6/4, which is probably not going to get chump blocked. I think the Underworld Coinsmith is going to do a better job trading for something than it will do dying a meaningless death.
Yeah. So that puts Baldeep down to 14.
Baldeep Detention Spheres, the
Yes.
Burning Tree Emissaries. I assume it's still going to be on the Burning Tree Emissaries. We're experiencing a little bit of lag here. We'll see in just a second which card it targets. And Dane is reaching for the Burning Tree Emissary. That's going to be the answer. Yeah, well, okay, that was absolutely fabulous. Give us just a minute to take care of that. I got it.
We are having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, the gray pixels that you see that vaguely resemble Dane's hand, that's not what we are intending to be broadcasting right now. Okay, so what I think is going to happen is we're going to not be able to load the videos from the current rounds while we're streaming. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to end that upload now, which means we'll watch these videos, and then at some point tonight we will have to disconnect so that we can load the rest of the videos, and then we'll finish up then. So I know that's inconvenient, but we don't have a clever workaround for that right now. So that's the direction we're going to go with this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch back over to our round 3 overlay. Let's back this up a couple seconds. And now we're going back to the beginning of Baldeep's turn. Sorry again for that inconvenience. We didn't have quite enough processing power to play these videos and upload ones to our hard drive at the same time. But there again is the detention sphere on the Burning Tree Emissaries, which means Underworld Coinsmith gets to trade with Boon Satyr, and Baldeep is only going to take 2 damage. Baldeep will play the fetch, go down to 4, so there's Jace. Jace will do a good job of fogging those Elvish Mystics unless Dane decides to bestow a Boon Satyr or something of the like.
Dane's 5th land, 1 card in hand.
So it looks to me like Baldeep has gotten past the most degenerate part of Dane's hand.
Read the bones.
So Baldeep has gotten into the I'm going to draw a bunch of cards phase of the game, which is exactly where he wants to be and not where Dane wants to see him at all. Which means he's going to get to hit a land drop, and he's taking the 2 damage, so he's probably keeping a removal spell in hand. Takes Jace up. Dane needs to take a look at exactly what does that ultimate say? It's a -8, I believe. I'll look that up while they're doing it. That says search for each player, search that player's library for a non-land card and exile it. Then that player shuffles his or her library. You may cast those cards without paying their mana cost, and it is in fact a -8. A Bile Blight deals with the Elvish Mystics. Dane responds with a Witch Stalker. And Baldeep plays Blood Baron of Vizkopa. It's a 5-mana 4/4 lifelink, protection from white and black. This card is quite the bane of many decks, however, the mono green deck doesn't quite suffer those same pitfalls. Although it is worth noting that 4/4 is bigger than 3/3, and Dane has a pair of 3/3s.
Yes.
Dane attacks because his only hope is to have Baldeep respect a trick, and Baldeep says, I don't think you have any tricks, and blocks, which is probably going to harken the end of this game. You see, he's just a land in hand, which is really, stating the obvious, not good for Dane. Baldeep attacks, gains the life, doesn't leave his Jace protected, except perhaps Bile Blight or Hero's Downfall. Dane draws a card, surveys his options, and they're not all that good.
We know one is at least a land.
It's worth noting that Baldeep only has a single blue in play, so he couldn't counter something. Hunter's Prowess, which is not going to do anything because he has no creatures left in play. They take a playful look at the top of their libraries, but this match comes to an end. So we got to see Baldeep play enough Doomblades that the mono green deck couldn't effectively deal with it.
Yes.
All right. So how do you feel the mono green deck? What do you think the mono green deck has gained from the newest set? How much do you know about the newest set?
Not that much.
Fair enough. We have the green Dictate. Doubles your mana, but this deck, I think that only would function to limit your strengths by letting your opponent generate mana as much as you do. So perhaps not at all. I actually can't think of any powerful green Devotion cards from the new set. Devotion wasn't in the new set, was it? No.
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, the new Hydra is a pretty good card.
Oh yes, the Brood Master Hydra, the 6 mana
Yes.
7/7 monster is green XX. Put XXX Hydra tokens into play. Gelatinous
Yep.
Genesis on a body. Yes, if you can generate an absurd amount of mana, which that deck can generate an absurd amount of mana.
Yeah.
That's an army in a can. It's a Wolfbriar Elemental of sorts.
Yep.
All right.
Other than that, there's not very many cards I can think of.
And to be fair, there's not a whole lot of cards in Journey into Nyx. It is a pretty
Yeah.
small set. There aren't any mono green gods, and Pharika and Prufix, not really the direction you want to go there. Fair enough. So they got one, and that's about as much as I think you can ask for. Nessian Game Warden, perhaps, is a card that deck might start to see play in some of the Grandeur matchups.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think plan A is Burning True Emissary and Reverend Hunter. I have a big dude that I win yet. And some decks just can't answer it. It's always really nice to have those pillars of the format that kind of set the rules for how much can we durdle and how much do we have to interact in the lower levels.
Yeah.
Mono Green does that in kind of the same way that Mono Red Devotion did during Thera Standard. I don't know why Mono Red Devotion is gone.
Yeah. It did well in some parts. It's just that green has more of the things that have double green or tripled green. So it's a lot easier to get Devotion in green than it is in red. Most of the things that are in red, most of them only go up to 2 red, and the rest are just colorless.
That's true. Whereas green, you get Arbor Colossus specifically is a fat triple green spell.
Yeah.
Right, and I guess it's worth noting that the Mono Red Devotion, you need all your creatures to live, and you don't get to play any Witch Stalkers, so you probably lose pretty bad to the Mono Black deck that is the boogeyman of the format.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You played against Mono Black in this tournament, I believe.
Yes.
In round 2?
3?
3?
Yeah, 3.
It was against Nick Delaney, right?
Yeah.
Who we see all the time on the stream. He hasn't been on here yet, but I think there's a chance that we're going to get him later tonight. So he's playing Mono Black. How'd that matchup go?
Not well for me.
Not well for you. Do you want to tell people what you're playing?
I'm playing a green, blue-red.
Green, blue, red.
I'm playing, let's see, I'm playing Thassa, Perforos, a lot of the things that can get me, my deck's kind of slow. I need at least 4 mana to play anything in this deck.
Oh, okay.
So I have to be able to draw my land or I can't do anything in this deck.
Fair enough. How's it been working trying to play a blue devotion card and a red devotion card, Thassa and Perforos?
It's pretty good.
Do you ever manage to activate them?
I've managed to activate Perforos and I've managed to activate Thassa once.
Okay. So it's rough to play the 3-color devotion deck?
Yeah. I'm thinking of changing it to either blue-green or I'm going white-blue.
White-blue?
White-blue-green.
Okay. That's quite a bit different than what you've been playing now, because I've seen Xenagos and Ralzeric as some of the game-winning cards in your deck. So tell me about the white-blue-green deck. What would you do there?
Well, I'd be playing Elspeth. This would kind of be like an aggro deck, almost. I'd be going a lot faster with this.
Fair enough.
So I can get guys out on turn 1 through and just keep on getting guys through.
So we're talking about playing like Elvish Mystics and Soldier of the Pantheon side by side?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen Elvish Mystic and Soldier of the Pantheon in the same deck. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Do we think we're prepared to go to the next round, or we need to load? Okay. Yeah, we're gonna try to start round 4. There's a chance we might run into the same gray pixels of death that we did last time, and in that case, we're gonna get to talk about Bant a little longer. But we're gonna give it a shot. So round 4, we get to see the brothers. It's always nice to see Baldeep and Jaws play. Well, I guess, I don't know. It's always a little tedious to watch Jaws play, because 14 turns later we start casting spells.
Well, technically it's not 14 turns later because casting lands is technically a spell.
It's not, actually. Lands aren't spells. They can't be countered. All that jazz. Dryad Arbor says specifically, this is not a spell.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why there's a difference between cards that say you may play ... and you may cast ... Because like Jace's Ultimate says you may cast those cards. So if the card you look for in exile is a land, you can't play it.
Huh.
So there's some fun nomenclature information. Both players have 1 land tapped and 1 land untapped in play, so each of them have been scrying for the first couple of turns. Both of these decks don't really want to do anything until turn 5, so they're both very happy to play their scry lands and make sure they hit their land drops. Baldeep has Thoughtseize in his deck, and he has a non-zero number of main deck Sin Collectors, which means he'll have the opportunity to force some spells through against Jaws.
Which is pretty good, seeing as how the last game Jaws played, it was all counter.
All counters all the time.
Yeah.
I guess it was more removal than counters, but...
Yeah, removals.
So Baldeep begins what I suspect will be an endless parade of 5-drops by playing Blood Baron. So Jaws has to decide, do I spend one of my limited counter spells on this, or do I destroy it with a removal spell? It appears as though he has Detention Sphere, which does not target Blood Baron. Is it Charm, which won't meaningfully interact with Blood Baron, and Steam Augury, which draws cards. Oh, there's a Counterflux. Okay, so he does have an out to Blood Baron right now. Looks like the Counterflux is going to happen. Although the hesitation, I believe, shows Baldeep that he doesn't have an infinite amount of counterspells, and he may actually be able to force card through just by slamming more 5-drops until something sticks. He scries and he keeps it on top, which means it's either going to be a land or an answer. I don't know if that answer is going to be a Supreme Verdict or a counterspell.
Thoughtsies.
So he shows Revelation, Revelation, Augury, Is It Charm, Azorius Charm. Which means he's going to draw a lot of cards this game. But the good news is, Baldeep gets to see... Oh, I'm sorry, that second Revelation was a Detention Sphere. Baldeep gets to see that the coast is clear, and there's only the inconsistent answer of Azorius Charm to Obsidian. Baldeep is trying to decide if he's going to Is It Charm into a Syncopate. So he does opt to draw 2, then discard 2.
If Baldeep can keep dropping these 5-drops until Jaws loses all of his counter spells, removal spells, I'm thinking that Baldeep can do pretty well.
And there Jaws decides to discard the Detention Sphere because it doesn't answer Obsidat and it doesn't answer Blood Baron. He didn't hit the Syncopate, which means he's gonna have to find an answer to Obsidat. Azorius Charm will buy him a turn, but only if Baldeep decides to attack. Because right now, we're just chipping away at that life total, and that might be good enough. Baldeep hits his 7th land drop, which is probably not that great for him, in fact. I don't know if you want more than 6. I guess if you're playing Jason drawing cards, then everything becomes value.
Yes. So there's Jace, and it resolves.
Oh, Turn and Burn for 5 mana answers that Obsidat. And Baldeep decided to tick up the Jace, which probably makes Jaws regret discarding Detention Sphere.
Although, knowing Jaws, he has another one in his deck.
Yeah, he probably has 4 in his deck.
Yeah. But the chances of him drawing it are pretty slim.
Well, they get a lot better when he starts Sphinx's Revelationing.
Yes. When he starts to draw cards, he has a lot better chance of drawing that second Detention Sphere.
So Jace draws Baldeep into an Azorius Key Rune, which I didn't even realize how important that card probably is to the deck who's trying to play mono 5-drops. Playing 5-drops on turn 4 is better than playing them on turn 5. When the Coinsmith enters the battlefield, he's not terribly impressive, but he's going to gain him a life, and he is going to force Jaws to respond to it. He can't just wipe all of the threats away with a Supreme Verdict. So he doesn't have any ways to meaningfully generate card advantage against the Underworld Coinsmith. So instead he'll generate card advantage by casting Theme Augury. Looks like he's got 3 lands, a Syncopate, and a Warleader's Helix, which means he's probably either going to draw the Syncopate or the Warleader's Helix. Baldeep put the Syncopate in his hand, which is the weaker spell, but he also put the Mutavault in his hand, which is the strongest land. And I believe that all this is happening during Baldeep's end step. Yes, it is indeed. So now his turn, in fact, ends. Jaws gets to untap. There's the second Mutavault.
8 lands in play for Jaws.
Which will be Revelation for 5 is available. Which will render Baldeep's attacks with the Coinsmith and potentially the Key Rune ineffective for several turns. He'd have to tap mana and risk his Key Rune to make it just a single turn before he makes up for the Sphinx's Revelation damage. There he activates the Coinsmith, which is not something that we can forget about. If they both just decide to keep their mana up for the rest of the game, then Coinsmith can do 5 damage to him each turn.
Chooses the Ghost Cancel.
Do you think he plays the Ghost Council here?
I think so.
Yeah, I guess worst case scenario, it gets countered and it prevents your opponent from casting Revelation this turn. Baldeep's thinking the same thing we were. If he doesn't cast Obsidat, then Jaws can't effectively generate an advantage this turn. Or can't effectively use his counter spells, I should say. He animates the Key Rune and gets in for 2.
And passes the turn.
We're still in the combat step.
Alright, so turns him to the top of the library.
And now Baldeep still has the same decision to make.
Does he play the Ghost Council or...
And he does not. Of course, Jaws didn't Revelation at end of turn either. So I guess the Azorius Charm was just enough to make it not worth Jaws only Revelationing for 3.
Yeah.
Which means this turn he can slam the Obsidat, get it countered, and prevent Jaws from getting a meaningful Revelation off for another turn.
I believe that Baldeep has a Detention Sphere in hand.
Okay. And Jaws doesn't have a whole lot of permanents. He has none in play right now, but not a whole lot in his deck. He has, I know we have Relzerix, we have Jace's, we have Elspeth's.
Yeah. Which, just Detention Sphere that is pretty good.
Yes, indeed. Well, he's behind the 3 dudes.
Yeah.
He plays the Key Rune. Looks like the Key Rune's going to resolve. I think he thinks about attacking with Coinsmith just because it would eat at least... I guess it only eats 1 mana of Jaws. Jaws untaps without casting Revelation that turn either. He does have it, right?
I think so.
Oh, well, oh, maybe it was Thoughtseize away from him. Maybe he doesn't have it. No, he has Syncopate and Supreme Verdict in his hand. Oh, that really makes the dynamic of the game very different than I thought it was. Suddenly it doesn't look like Jaws is looking for an opportunity to win the game, and it looks a lot more like...
Baldeep's going for that.
Like, yes, exactly.
Baldeep still has the chance after combat to play the Ghost Council.
Oh, looks like we had a lapse. Our camera only records 12 minutes at a time, so when a game goes longer than 12 minutes, we have to turn it off and on again. So I'm sorry for that delay. We're right back where we stopped. Baldeep opted not to cast Ghost Council again. He really doesn't want to get it syncopated, which is fair enough. As long as he's draining life with the Coinsmith and threatening to draw more cards with Jace, that's a threat that Jaws has to answer.
Yes.
We have a judge reading Underworld Coinsmith. I think both of the players know what the card does, but I'm not certain. It could be that there was a question involved. So it looks like we're paused in the middle of a scry from Jaws. Yes, indeed. He opts not to keep that card. If he passes the turn, then Baldeep will drain him down to 5. And then, oh, he does that in response to a Supreme Verdict. Fair enough. So is this where you slam Obsidian?
If it were me, yes.
You keep up 3 mana to potentially pay Syncopate, but he can Syncopate for 5, so that's just not good enough. If you play a land this turn, then you can play Obsidian. If he counters it, play Jace and take him down.
Yeah.
Instead, I'll animate the Key Rune, try and attack for 2. Take it, go down to 3.
And
I guess we did see one more enchantment in the game. We did see Grim Guardian.
yes.
Okay, so we have a little bit more Constellation support.
And Baldeep still chooses not to play the Ghost Council.
So Jaws kills the Jace, which is fair enough. Baldeep has another one. And he plays a Detention Sphere on the last discernible threat. So now is the time where Baldeep has to start casting spells. Even if those spells are just a Banishing Light on the Detention Sphere. Because that is a 2/2 that he's gaining access to.
He's going to animate it and swing for 2.
It actually has Summoning Sickness this turn. So if he animates it, yeah, that's what Jaws
Yeah.
is telling him. He can't attack this turn.
So either he plays the Jace or he plays the Ghost Council.
And whichever one he plays, I'm sure it's going to run into a Syncopate. Or he could play super conservative.
And go read the bones.
So if you read the bones and you hit a land, you slam the Jace. It's just going to get countered, but it's going to get that card out of Jaws' hand. He keeps one, he ships one. So he drew something he liked. And he passes the turn. So there's a chance for Jaws to draw a Revelation, and I think run away with this game if he has it. Looks like he's going to play Elspeth instead, which is flirting with death.
He's going to bring out those 3 1/1 White Soldier tokens.
Which cannot block the Azorius Key Rune.
Yes. Now the question is, will Baldeep Detention Sphere Elspeth? And then drop the Ghost Council?
Drops the Ghost Council because Jaws only has enough mana to syncopate for 3. So Baldeep will not pay it. Fair enough. He'd rather play the Whip of Erebos so that he can... Oh, can't get back Obsidian next turn because it's been exiled. So what creatures does he have in his graveyard? He has Coinsmith,
Yes.
which is not quite good enough. Queensmith, no, he has 6 mana in play. So yeah, he could just animate Queensmith and activate it 3 times, and that would end the game if Baldeep doesn't gain life this turn. However, an Azorius Charm, or a Detention Sphere, or a Sphinx's Revelation would get him around that. But none of those cards were revealed with that flip.
So, Mizzy Mortar and a land or the Mutavault.
Now, I think Jaws is looking at that and saying, yep, that doesn't beat it, so he's going to scoop him up. Gives his brother a lot of credit for seeing that line of play and knowing that line of play is safe. But when you play with each other enough, I guess you know what the other one's capable of.
Yes. Especially the fact that they're brothers, and they do help each other with their decks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when they're playing each other, they kind of know what cards that they might pull.
Now, I suspect, although I don't know this for certain, but I suspect that both of them have played games with both of those decks several times.
Yes. Meaning that they both know what that deck can have and will use if necessary.
And one of the things that's really nice about that when you get a play group like that is a lot of times when I play a deck a certain way. And then when I get to see someone else, for me it's usually Gary Goki, when I get to see him play a deck and he plays it some other way, I start to learn new lines from him.
Yeah.
And it, I think, does nothing but expands both of our play ability.
Yes.
I think we're going to jump into game 2. Okay, not just yet. Yeah, we're ready to fire that whenever you are. So, what are we doing in sideboarding here?
If I were Jaws, I'd sideboard more of the removal spells.
Removal spells.
Because it seems that Baldeep is pumping out a lot of things that can do quite a severe amount of damage to you.
What I see is, we know that Baldeep isn't playing a real fast game.
Yes.
So what I wonder is whether or not he's bringing in negates. Because negate hits Jace, and it hits Elspeth, and it hits Whip of Erebos, which have all reared their ugly heads in Baldeep's deck. But it doesn't hit Obsidat, and it doesn't hit Bloodbaron.
Yes, so bring more things in that. So we need things that bring in and remove the planeswalkers that Jaws has, and targeting those
non-creature part. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what we see here is a turn 2 Brain Maggots, which is the Mesmeric Fiend, the Thoughtseize. I don't know, maybe it's Thoughtseize number 9 through 12. I have no idea. We see Counterflux, War Leader's Helix.
A second Warriors?
I'm not sure if that's a second War Leader's Helix or an Aurelius Fury. It's probably War Leader's Helix. The Supreme Verdict will get taken by the Brain Maggots, and there's also a Sphinx's Revelation in hand. Jaws decides to be gentlemanly and keep his hand revealed. Nope, never mind. It's tournament. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna pick my hand back up. I hope you wrote it down. There's the turn 3 Breemaz. We saw that he didn't have an answer to it when Brain Maggots resolved, but he did draw a card since then, so it was still probably a little sigh of relief for Baldeep to see he didn't have an answer, because now he has to play at sorcery speed. And he plays the Supreme Verdict, which gets him another Supreme Verdict, and we see that he still has a War Leader's Helix in hand. So it was nice, you got him to tap out. Unfortunately, you haven't reached 5 mana yet. That is why being on the play is so important for Baldeep in this matchup, is if your opponent taps out for a Supreme Verdict, you can cast one of your meaningful spells.
Yes.
This time he didn't get to. He gets
There goes the...
Sphinx's Revelation.
Yes.
And he casts Big Divination. He sees Duress and something else. And there are currently no counterspells. Oh, I lied, there's a Counterflux. There's currently one counterspell in Jaws' hand. So if you take Duress, then that's going to help you force through whatever you want to play next turn. So I think that's a Duress, a Jace, a Breemaz. Can't tell what those other ones are, and it's worth noting there's only one blue mana in play for Baldeep. So when he takes this Counterflux, he still can't slam a Jace unless he has another blue mana.
Yes.
Now there's Sin Collector, so Jaws counterfluxes the Thoughtseize and then gets hit by the bigger Thoughtseize.
Yeah. And once again, Baldeep keeps pumping out those cards that keep revealing Jaws' hand.
Yeah, he is eating that hand with those, Tide Hollow's colors and whatever. I really think that's an Aurelius Fury. I don't know, but I think that's an Aurelius Fury. There, he hits a second blue, so now he's probably going to slam Jace.
Yep.
Jace resolves, and this game, like last game, is not looking so good for Jaws. And there is the classic powerful play of I'm going to Jace into another Jace. And the next turn, I'm going to kill my Jace, and I'm going to play a Jace. Baldeep gets to Helix the one Jace, and then hope that he draws a counterspell for the next one.
Yes.
Looks like he just draws a card and passes the turn. I missed Baldeep's draw step. There's a Brain Maggot, so again, I'm going to look at your hand. Has a Supreme Verdict in it? I'm going to take that Supreme Verdict. Oh, and Jaws did have a counterspell.
But decided not to use it.
It drops a Fiend Slayer Paladin, which can't be destroyed by Mizzy Mortars, but it can be destroyed by Ralzeric.
Which Jaws I don't believe is.
He has one in hand, actually. We just saw it.
Okay, so Jaws has Ralzeric in hand.
And it can actually be destroyed by Mizzy Mortar's Overload, but Jaws is a pair of red mana away from doing that. So Jaws opts to hold up Syncopate instead of Ralzericing something away. So I guess he can handle taking a couple hits. He can't handle an Obsidian or a Jace entering the battlefield. So there's the Jace. It'll get Syncopated. But now that Syncopate is out of his hand.
Which is pretty good for Baldeep for right now.
Exactly. We know Jaws doesn't have the Verdict, although all he has to do is Mizzy Mortars the Brain Maggots and he'd get a Verdict.
Yes.
But again, if you tap out, then who knows what kind of terrible monster Baldeep will play. Actually, Jaws knows, because he put them in that deck.
Yeah. Once again, there's that idea of the fact that Jaws knows what Baldeep can have in his hand and what he can draw.
And he knows that Baldeep has plenty of threats that don't die to Supreme Verdict. So
Yes.
That's the answer that he's packing for a lot of these threats. He can't let them resolve.
And that Baldeep also knows what Jaws has. Because, like you said, they've both played these decks before, and they're brothers.
And Baldeep has looked at Jaws' hand every other turn this entire game.
Yes.
So he knows not only what's in Jaws' deck, but he has an intimate familiarity with what's in Jaws' hand and what's going to be played this game.
Yeah.
So after really tanking on that scry, he decides, no, that card's not going to get me out of this. Hopefully I can find something else that does.
What it was, we do not know.
We don't see the Mizzy Mortars on the Brain Maggot, so I'm not sure what he's holding up. He could have hit a counterspell, or he could just be representing it so that Baldeep has to respect it. Either way, he's going to be attacking for 4. Send Jaws down to 10, which is going to be a 3-turn clock. Now we get to find out, do you have the counterspell? You don't. You have an Elspeth.
And a Mizzy Mortar and a Ralzeric in hand. That is all you have.
So the only way that I think, and there's the Obsidian, that's very ouch. So, assuming we hit a land and we Mizzy Mortar's Brain Maggots and then we Supreme Verdict the other 2 away, then we get hit by Obsidian down to 1 and it flickers, that's not looking very good. How do we get out of this one? My hunch is that we don't.
Yeah. Unless Jaws can pull a miracle.
Terminus.
Yeah.
Wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. I think Jaws is going to be scooping him up real quick, but he's gonna think. He's gonna try and figure out if he has any outs. Because if you Revelation for 2, you die. If you Supreme Verdict now, you don't die, but you don't have an answered Obsidian either. If you Supreme Verdict and you chump block with Mutavault and you draw Turn and Burn,
Jaws is kind of cornered right now. What's he playing?
he's going to Mizium Orders the Brain Maggots, getting the Supreme Verdict. And then he's going to scroll. Yep, so there you go. That's what we thought was going to happen. I think that's Aurelia's Fury, but I'm not certain. I'm going to have to ask Jaws between rounds. Are you playing Aurelia's Fury, and why do you side it in against the mono 5-drop deck?
Yeah.
My hunch, it's probably not. But I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure either. It's Jaws we're talking about here.
Yeah, but Aurelia Fury doesn't really seem like a Jaws style of card.
Yeah.
It eats 1/1s? That's not what we're doing here. It can't be that. I have no idea. It's probably just War Leader's Helix. But I had a different art. I didn't recognize it. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
What do you think of War Leader's Helix in that matchup?
I think it can do pretty well. I think it's a pretty good card for this deck.
It hits Jace. It hits Coinsmith. It hits Keyrune and Grim Guardian. But notably, it doesn't hit Obsidat and it doesn't hit Blood Baron.
Yeah, which kind of is not that good.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I
because Baldeep, see, he's either running 3 to 4 of them in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 8 things that Jaws can't exactly deal with.
And I know he mentioned that against the mono black deck, he likes to sideboard into a burn deck because you're playing Turn and Burn, you're playing War Leader's Helix, and you're playing Rouse Eric, and all of those say do damage to target player's face. And since Baldeep is using Read the Bones and he's using Shock Lance in order to try to smooth out his play, he's using his life total as a resource. And if you use it a little bit too much, maybe I end of turn War Leader's Helix, and then Turn and Burn War Leader's Helix. Is the game over yet? It's 10 damage.
Yeah.
So it's worth noting that the Jaws always has that threat available in his deck, and maybe that's his plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't get around 5 because we didn't get around 5 for game 1. So we'll be going straight into round 2. It's going to be Alex versus Jagjit. Alex won game 1. So I believe these players are 3-1. Okay, I suspect these players are 3-1, and so I think the situation that we're going to find is that the winner of this match is in. They'll make it to the top 8, and the loser of this match is on the bubble. That's what we ran into in previous weeks when we saw this matchup. So, not this matchup, but the round 5 pairings like this. So that's what I assume we're going to encounter this time.
Yes.
So we saw Jagjit's deck, which is playing the Constellation Graveyard. And
Alex is playing a mono black, almost like an aggro deck. He's running Pack Rats.
We might be thinking about
Desecration
different
Gene.
Alexes. Alex McClement just played green-white land.
Okay.
He's playing an Eidolon of Blossoms, another Enchantress enchantment deck.
Yeah, wrong Alex.
Fair enough. I think there were 3 in the event tonight.
Yeah.
We have myriad Alexes. Neither player plays any cards on their first 2 turns. We get a Nyx Weaver, which is that awesome 2/3 enabler from Jagjit. So for Alex, we get a turn 3 Font of Fertility, which is just going to be Search for Tomorrow. It's just going to be a 3-mana Rampant Growth this game.
Yeah.
When he hits another white land, which means he's not splashing, Alex is probably just dedicated to 2 colors. So what we had there was Jagjit missed the trigger, so he tried to draw the card. And Alex is like, no, those cards go in your graveyard. Jagjit's like, oh, right. Well, this is what I drew, so we put that in the graveyard, and he draws new cards to replace it. He taps mana on his turn for Grizzly Salvage. He's going to take a land. I didn't see how many creatures went in there, so he's got 2, maybe 3 creatures in his graveyard.
Yes. Swings for 2. Alex takes it. Puts him down at 18.
So this game, Jagjit's mana developed just fine. He's got some creatures in his graveyard, so he's going to be prepared to play his game the way he wants to play his game, which we didn't really get to see in round 2. Alex hits his 5th land and doesn't play any spells. So who knows what's happening? Maybe he's sitting on mono Elspeths, or maybe he has a bunch of Vanishing Lights and doesn't think the Nyx Weaver is important enough. Here we Grizzly Salvage for a land. We put 1 more creature in the graveyard. This time hopefully Jagjit remembers his trigger. 2 more creatures go to the graveyard. So now if he plays Night Howler, it's going to be a 6/6.
Yeah.
Maybe it's only a 5/5.
5/5 or 6/6.
Starts by attacking for 2, and Alex is like, I have a 5/5. Jagjit's like, I'm gonna Hero's Downfall that? Oh, he's gonna exile his Nyx Weaver to get something back, probably Night Howler. Oh, he gets the Krufix's Insight. Oh, that wasn't Krufix's Insight. That's Strength of the Fallen. That's the constellation.
Yep.
X plus X plus X. X is equal number of creatures in your graveyard. And then second main phase, he'll play Lot Left Draw. So now when you play Strength of the Fallen, I believe it triggers on itself, which will make Lot Left Troll 7/6 until end of turn. If he then slams a Nyx Weaver, then that goes up to a... I don't know what numbers are. What I'm saying is Strength of the Fallen looks like it has the opportunity to make Lot Left Troll really big, really fast.
Yes.
Alex plays Nylea's Presence on his forest to cycle. Now Jagjit excitedly untaps his lands. I'm hoping to see a big turn here because I haven't seen exactly what Strength of the Fallen can do, and this turn we might get that chance. We're going to start with Strength of the Fallen.
Strength of the Fallen.
He targets it, and I didn't see how many it is, but he's about to show us. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's 5. Well, we'll see for certain when damage happens.
If damage happens.
It's true. So right now it looks like Lot Left Troll is a 7/6. If he plays another creature, it becomes a 12/11. And there is the Nyx Weaver, so it should be a 12/11, although he didn't tap the thing again, so I'm not sure he noticed the second trigger. Yeah, it looks like they didn't notice the second trigger, and he only hits for 7. Alex seems unhappy by the number of lands he's drawn. We see Nylea's Presence in his hand. Doesn't do a whole lot. That might be an Eidolon of Blossoms, so he might get the chance to... Yeah, there is the Eidolon of Blossoms, so that'll cantrip. He might get the chance to draw a bunch of cards this turn. So now he'll play Nylea's Presence, which will both cantrip and trigger the Eidolon, so we're going to get the Divination. So Alex runs the risk of getting blown up by a giant trampling Lot Left Troll every turn. So you're gonna send 2 more things to his graveyard, and one of them is a Courser. Which means if he draws a creature and he discards it and he plays an enchantment, then we're up to 6, 7. He discarded 1, so that would be 8. He can make 10 power lot left troll come in with very little trouble, and you have to block that.
Or that's
Dead.
game.
Exactly. You can't block it with just Eidolon because it has trample.
Yes.
And you can't double block it for value because it has regenerate. So there he plays his own Eidolon of Blossoms, which is going to make the lot left troll real fat, and it's going to draw him a card. And he's like, I'm going to attack with my giant thing. I believe it's a 9/8 right now.
Yes.
And since you know he has to block, you decide to come in with the Nyx Weaver anyway, because it seems free. Six, 4, so we take for, yeah, that seems right. That's 2 damage from the Weaver and 2 damage from the 7 power lot left troll.
Which, if Nick doesn't pull something pretty big, pretty fast.
I think that's another Eidolon of Blossoms, so he's going to draw 2 cards.
See what he pulls, and if he can't pull anything good, it's game.
It's worth noting that the lot left troll needs more food. If he doesn't have an enchantment enter the battlefield, then the lot left troll is going to be a lowly 2/1. This turn, Alex is playing Karametra, which is going to draw him another 2 cards, and he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Devotion, which means Karametra is a dude, and I think he's a 6/7. He's 6/7 indestructible, so that'll be pretty good at blocking the lot left troll. Jaws is looking at the number of his creatures in his graveyard, which I believe is at 8. Although it's really hard to keep track of, because when he flicks through those, it's difficult to tell exactly which cards are which. The 10 power is definitely good enough that he can bash unabashedly into that Karametra. 4 mana, he'll play a Night Howler, and that is absurd. That's going to give you the Constellation trigger, that's going to give you the +X from the Night Howler, so if that is in fact 8 cards in his graveyard, then we're looking at an 18 power Trampler.
Which is gonna suck.
So if he attacks with his 18 power Trampler, and Alex blocks with the 11 power he has on the board, then he only takes 7, which is still good enough to make him scoop them up.
Do you think there's a way that Alex can get out of this?
No, he's tapped out. I don't think we need anything other than hit the lot left, attack with the lot left troll, and it's over. Even the Mogi's Marauder seems entirely unnecessary, and Alex agrees 100%. We're gonna scoop him up.
Yeah.
So there we got to see it. We got to see what Strength of the Fallen can do. And really, I didn't think that that card was that impressive, but there you go.
Yeah, there's your proof.
You put on lot left troll, and like, I have a giant trampler every turn. And how big is it? It's as big as lot left troll wants it to be. So there you go. And Nyx Weaver's got to be the card that brings this together.
Yes. That Night Howler at the end, though, that pretty much brought it down.
So 2 cards that have been real staples in Dredge decks from last season that haven't yet reared their ugly heads in this deck are the Shadowborn Demon and the Gerard.
Yes.
Now I really hope the Gerard is in this deck, because if you get to play an enchantment, making lot left troll or whatever the heck you want into a 10/10, and then you attack, and then you sack it to throw it at their face, that's an insane amount of damage. Imagine when you play the Night Howler. Night Howler is an 8/8. Any enchantment entering the battlefield turns into a 16/16. Maybe I'm living in magical Christmas land where my graveyard is as big as I want it to be, but I think with Nyx Weaver, with Grizzly Salvage, Kruvix's Insight, you're gonna get your graveyard big. I think that Enchantress, green-black deck, that's something I want to look into.
Yeah.
So let's go to game 2, shall we? Oh, I'm sorry, this is going to game 3, because again, we missed game 1. So Alex won game 1, and Jagjit won game 2. So this is game 3. Alex is on the play, and Jagjit mulliganed to 6. Fair enough. Alex hits his first land drop on the scry. They both hit their first land drops. Welcome to Theros Standard, where people play their lands tapped and nothing matters. Now we get this turn 2 lot lift roll. There's the Banishing Light on the lot lift troll, which is real important because, as we've seen before, lot lift troll gets real big real fast.
Yeah.
And there's Courser, which is he's seeing play everywhere. Courser
Yes.
is the green card that makes
It's like scrying.
it makes enchantment removal main boardable against the green decks. So now we've got Detention Sphere against the blue-white decks, Underworld Connections against the black decks, Courser against the green decks, and we live in a format where you can main board Ray of Dissolution if you want, or Unravel the Ether. And you're gonna have targets.
Yeah.
And you see, we got green-white against green-black, and both players have an enchantment in play.
Yes. So,
Alex pops his Font of Fertility, plays an Elvish Mystic, so he's going to have 6 mana available to him next turn if that's what he chooses to do. Jagjit draws the Courser, reveals the land, plays the land, so we're up 1 card. Hasn't played the land yet, because he wants to play the second Courser first and get that full value going to 22. Reveals that, he scries, and opts to keep the Boon Satyr on top of his library. Then attacks for 2, so we've got 18 to 22. So Jagjit may have mulliganed, but he made that card right up by that dang Courser of Prefix.
yes.
We
Now
see
his presence on the forest. 1 green, 1 colorless, makes the enchanted land every color, including the colorless.
and it draws a card.
Yes.
So Jagjit plays another land, gains some more life. He hasn't played any graveyard-based cards yet, but he has the Nyx Weaver on top of his library. So this is where you want to see your Nemesis of Mortals, your Gerards, whatever. Well, not Gerard, I guess, because it would just be a 2/2. But whatever fat cards that used to exist in the Dredge deck that don't appear to see play in this deck. Alex flashes in a 5/5 to try and deal with a 2/4, but Jagjit's gonna turn the other one into a 6/6. So he's gonna get in for 6, get 1 Courser eaten, and have a 6/6, which is bigger than a 5/5. And that's all it needs to be right now. Alex didn't, in fact, change his life total, but I believe he's at 14. And there is a Ajani. Do you know what a Ajani does?
No.
All right. Plenty of times today I've heard someone say, I'll play Ajani and use his +1, to which the response is, which one? Because Ajani has 2 +1s. You either put 3 1/1 counters on, distributed among any number of creatures you control, or you look at the top, I believe it's 4 cards, and reveal a creature, planeswalker, or aura from among them and put them into your hand. This time, he chooses to make his worm big enough that the 6/6 isn't going to be able to get through it. Also, Ajani's -8, if you ever get there, is you gain 100 life. So if you haven't drawn enough cards and made your guys big enough to get there, 100 life will probably finish the job.
Yes. Once you ultimate Ajani, it's practically almost impossible for your opponent to win.
Yeah, that's what I heard from watching Star City Games where Johnny had his breakout, whatever, is the 100 life acts as the linchpin because it's like 5 fog effects, where you drew a bunch of cards with the Johnny, they're going to take over the game, but we're not sure exactly when, and the Johnny's ultimate gives you enough time to make sure those cards win you the game.
Yeah.
Right now, he's just making an 11/11 Trampler. That'll end the game reasonably quickly on its own.
Yeah. So this is game 3.
This is game 3.
Alex won first one.
Jagjit won the second. And I think if you're Jagjit, you just take 11.
Yeah. That put us at 13.
That would put him at 13. And then Alex has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 devotion, so Karametra's not live. So if he can get rid of that 1/1, or if he just uses his Marauder, oh no, Marauder giving Courser Intimidate won't solve the problem, because Elvish Mystic shares a color. That Nyx Weaver Courser is a bizarre interaction because you see the top card of your library, but you're not going to draw it. So this is where you need Shadowborn Demon,
Yes.
or Tormented Herald, or Herald of Torment. That's what it's called. Herald of Torment.
Herald of Torment.
You need one of your cards that makes your guy big enough to get through. And a lot of those cards were cut from Jagjit's deck for the enchantment support side of it. Which means I don't know what he has that can really answer what's going on here. And I think that we're just going to see him die to 2 more attacks from an 11/11.
Yes. Unless Alex makes him bigger
That's true.
and then kills him in one shot.
It'll be a 14-14 next turn. But Jagjit will block it with anything, go down to 2.
And still die.
Even not until the following turn.
Yes.
And I think that might have a lot to do with why Ajani's ultimate doesn't matter. Is because by the time you've made him an 8/8, by the time you get his loyalty up to 8, your gigantic creature is going to win the game.
Yes.
However, looky here, we have a Farika. And we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 loyalty, so that Farika is live. And Farika makes Death Touch snakes. Which means that not this turn, but next turn, because it requires black mana, we're going to be able to make something that can eat that Advent of the Worm.
Yes.
But next turn might be too slow. Farika only has 5 toughness, which means if he pumps this guy up to a 14-14, he's still going to be taking 9. He plays Courser, which both gets a land off Karametra and turns Karametra into a dude. And I still think that Ajani's just going to make these guys too big for Farika to matter. Farika's not going to be fast enough.
No.
Let's see if he, let's see. If he takes up Ajani, makes the Advent of the Worm at 14-14, and we've got 5, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, he only has 13 power in play. So even if he triple blocks, the Worm lives. He reveals the top card of his library. It's a land. He'll play it and gain another life. Jagjit says, didn't you already play a land? No, I used Karametra's triggered ability. Oh, right, okay. I read hands. It's sort of like reading lips, only you don't have to see their lips to do it. Alex sends Ajani up
To 8.
to 7. He's going to draw a card.
Yes.
He's going to look at the top 4, reveal a creature, planeswalker, or aura from among them. And that aura is quite relevant. If he has an unflinching courage, then his worm, which is a lowly 13/13, becomes lifelink and already has trample, I suppose. He Ajani's into Elspeth, which is one of the super powerful things about Ajani, is that it doesn't just hit creatures. You can, with Ajani, find Supreme Verdict resilient threats. So you attack with the 11/11. I think you automatically block with Farika and then decide if you want to trade your 6/6 for the rest of that worm. I think you do, because it leaves you with a Boom Satyr in play. Or perhaps you do, because when you Immortal Servitude for 3, you'll get a Mogus Marauder and 2 Coursers back.
Yes. Isn't Alex forgetting to play with his top card on his deck?
He is. He will do the double block. So he's like, I'll do 6 damage to that, and I don't know, 5 damage to that. And the Boom Satyr is actually untapped, but it's not relevant here because combat's already done. Oh, and that's true, that turns off Farika. Farika's not a dude right now, although he will be after an Immortal Servitude comes down, if Jagjit can get enough mana to Immortal Servitude for 3. Right, right. He doesn't draw the Immortal Servitude. Gesundheit. So now we have Alex with 1, 2, 3, potentially 8 power in play, which potentially 11 power in play, which is not going to kill Jagjit. So we might actually get the chance to see Ajani's ultimate.
Yes.
Which would be nothing more dramatic than adding a couple more dice and then watching Jagjit scoop up his cards, unless he can Hero's Downfall or Banishing Light, or in some other fashion deal with that Ajani.
Yeah.
Nyx Weaver will manage to turn Farika back on. But again, it consumes his black mana, so he can't start making snakes. Here, Alex untaps. We know he has Elspeth in his hand, which is gonna block whatever needs to be blocked. I believe that Alex revealed the land and put it into his hand. I think Alex might not know exactly what Courser does, which is definitely something that we'll make sure to tell him before he plays in another round. Fortunately, in this game, I don't think it's horrifically relevant because he's playing a ton of Planeswalkers, making a ton of 2/2s, and the game isn't going to last a whole lot longer. But it still is important to make sure that players read the cards.
Yes.
Looks like Alex is talking to someone off screen, trying to figure out a ruling. This turn he sent the Ajani up to 8, which means he might gain 100 life to make sure Elspeth has enough time to win the game. Jagjit starts his turn by putting 4 cards in his graveyard, although it looks like not many of them were creatures.
Which can't be good for him right now.
Correct. The previous version of Dredge would have like Herald of Torment as an out right now. But he doesn't have the double black, so he wouldn't be able to bestow it. His options for getting through that wall of blockers are not great. that lot left troll is a start because it has trample, and that Krufix's insight might find him a Strength of the Fallen and fill up his graveyard.
Yeah.
So he's looking like he's going to be able to have a real strong turn next turn, but if Alex gains 100 life, real strong doesn't mean do 100 damage.
Yeah.
It more means do 20 damage.
And it doesn't exactly matter. Alex can take quite a few punches before he actually starts to care.
On the other hand, making a giant trampler that can get through and kill Elspeth, and having an indestructible blocker, Jagjit could potentially get into a board state where he gets the 5 or 6 attacks that it takes to break through Ajani's life.
Yes.
So here, Alex takes the counters off Ajani. He's like, I'm gonna gain 100 life. Give me a second to track down some dice so I can represent this accurately. So people are coming and they're giving him stuff. So that sends him to 115, and he's not sure exactly how he's supposed to represent that. So he's grabbing a bunch of giant d20s. That's nice, I like this. We're 1d20 short. That's only 105, you're at 115. Don't sell yourself so short like that, Alex. He makes 3 more dudes. He ticks Elspeth up to 6, which means he's 2 turns away from turning his army into a bunch of giant flyers.
Yes. Which can definitely win him the game.
He plays Golden Hind, which will get him another land with Karametra, which will gain him another life, so that should send him up to 116, but it's only going to send him to 106. Now Alex is trying to figure out what his combat step is going to look like, and I don't envy him that decision. You can attack with the 6-7 fairly safely, but if you attack with just that, it'll get blocked by the 5-5, and your indestructible creatures will not do anything to each other. If you attack with a couple more creatures, then you need to attack with a bunch more creatures, because those 2-2s get eaten by those 2-3s. So I think it's quite likely that Alex opts to not have a combat step and just fill the board with more muck until Elspeth can get the job done.
Yep.
But Strength of the Fallen on that Trampler might be enough to put a wrench into those plans. 2 creatures were hit on the 4 cards that were milled with Nyx Weaver. I don't have a count on what that puts his graveyard at. It needs to be a real big number in order for a lot less troll to be able to break this. He plays the Courser before he plays the Strength of the Fallen. He hits the land going up to 14. He forgets to reveal the top card of his library, which is really common for Courser players after they've already played their land. I don't care anymore, it's not a land, but the rules still do say that you have to reveal them. Now look at the top 4, I'll put them all into his graveyard. We had 1 Strength of the Fallen trigger. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. I think it's at 9. But again, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes between Seder Wayfinders and Commune with the Gods. But I think that we're looking at an 11-10 lot left troll, which I think you have to throw at Elspeth, although you don't have any black mana now, so you can't regenerate him if he game blocks him.
Or he sacks one more white soldier token, but that's trample.
It's trample, yeah. 1 white soldier token won't deal with it. And he does have the, what I believe is a 7-8 Karametra, which could block a bunch of it, but he's like, I'll take 11. It's cool. I'll go down to 106. Okay. So now what we see is a board state with Courser on each side and neither top card of the library revealed. But it's been a long night. we have huge boards and lots of things to think about, and we can't be bothered to remember what our sorcerers do. I don't know, it's a 3 mana 2/4. That's good enough, right? So this turn, Jagjit is going to have to do damage to Elspeth, or else this giant army of flyers, this giant army of creatures, is going to become a giant army of giant flyers.
Yes. And if that happens, there's no way of getting around it.
No.
As far as I've seen, Jagjit hasn't been able to pull out any flyers, or even if he has flyers in his deck.
I mean, the spider's a 2/3 with reach,
Yes.
but it's not going to block 9 3-power flyers plus Karametra and who knows what else.
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury, Alex flashes in another worm at end of turn, which means we're going to deal an astronomical amount of damage.
Yeah.
We're looking at 45, 50, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, plus 7, 67, plus 1, plus 2, that's 70. So Alex looks like he's going to be able to attack for 70 damage next turn, which would not be enough to kill himself, but will be more than enough to kill Jagjit. Jagjit gets the 2 Grim Guardians, which will do 3 damage to Alex just from Constellation triggers, and then we'll have 2 Strength of the Fallen triggers on Lot Left Troll, which is going to make Lot Left Troll into, I don't know, like a 21/20, I believe, with Trample.
Yeah, that sounds right.
He still doesn't have Black Mana, but he... Oh, I'm sorry, this is the Immortal Servitude for 3. How did I miss that? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 8 Constellation triggers. And, okay, this is awesome. We've got 8 Constellation triggers with 2 Grim Guardians. So we're going to start by doing 16 damage to them. And on top of that, we have Strength of the Fallen, 8 triggers of, who knows, 2, maybe 3? Most of his creatures are on the battlefield. But that could be 24? And then your Mogi's Marauders enter the battlefield, and they can give the vast majority of his creatures haste and intimidate, which means we're going to have 3 Night Crawlers, Night Howlers. I can't do this math. I can't do this math, but I sure hope they can. He only attacks with the 1 dude, so we didn't take advantage of the haste, which is really unfortunate. He didn't take the 18 damage from Constellation either. It looks like these players are inexperienced with their decks, which makes sense. This is the first FNM that we've had since these cards are legal. And I don't know how many cards are in Jagjit's, how many creatures in Jagjit's graveyard, but I think they just missed a lot of calculations and a really, really gigantic combat step.
Yeah.
So there, Alex says, I make my guys huge and I attack, and they get the handshake. But again, that is very unfortunate, because Jagjit definitely could have taken Elspeth out with the intimidating haste creatures.
Well, it's definitely for sure that they are missing a lot of things that their decks need to do.
Absolutely, and both of these players have only played their decks once before, which isn't... I mean, this is their first tournament that they're playing it in. They haven't seen Constellation before. None of us have seen Constellation before, but we're building the decks and we want to see what's powerful. And I have to say that the stuff that green-black deck looks like it's doing looks really powerful. We have the list of players who top-aided, and unfortunately Jagjit's not on it, which means I'm not going to get to see that deck again, which is unfortunate, because I'm excited about that deck.
I want to see it again.
So our announcement for the top 8 players are Baldeep versus Kyle Scott, Dane Vennewitz versus Rosie Crow, Jeremy Hatfield versus Woody Sikowski, and Jaws versus Nick Delaney. And our feature match is Jaws versus Nick. So we're going to get to see Jaws' blue, white, red control square up against the mono black deck,
Yes.
which is kind of the classic Clash of the Titans. We see blue, white control against mono black happening over and over and over again. And there are lots of different flavors of blue, white control, so now we get to see the blue, white, red version of it.
Yes.
My understanding is that the way the matchup is supposed to go is game 1, mono black has a ton of dead cards, all their Bile Blights and Devour Fleshes and whatever else people are playing these days. So blue, white has a really, really strong game 1, but game 2, mono black gets to bring in the more duresses and the couple more threats like Lifebane Zombies. And
Yeah.
I think mono black is typically considered to be favored for games 2 and games 3, and it's up to the blue white deck to steal one of them. It's sort of like playing Legacy Dredge against anything in the format, where game 1 no one can interact with you, and then game 2 everyone has crazy overpowered cards against you and you have to try and steal one.
Yeah.
And Jaws has expressed to me his plan for how to beat the mono black deck and all their thought seizes, but I'm not going to reveal it because I think it's gonna rear its head probably in game 2 and game 3 if we get to game 3.
Yeah.
So let's fire this up. We have Nick on the left, Jaws on the right. It looks like Jaws won the toss, and he gets to play his first land. It's Theros limited, so our lands are entering tapped to start the game. I'll see you on turn 3 when players start casting spells. And that's all this card filter. When people first spoiled these cards, and I mean first, like when Theros was getting spoiled, everyone hated the Scrylands. They're like, oh, these are miserable, they enter tapped. We might as well play Guild Gates because these aren't any better. And I think the world has really changed their mind on that to the point where this is a mono black deck that Nick's playing, and it has a black white and a blue black land in play for no reason other than it scries.
Yes.
This land filters your card draws.
Scrying in general is really good. So having a lane that tributes to the color of your deck and still being able to have being able to scry like that can be really good.
So now it's turn 4, so we get to see spells start to get played. Nick resolves an Underworld Connections on his Swamp, which is the most important card for game 1. And now Jaws is probably going to get rid of it now, but that doesn't hurt as bad as you'd think because Nick gets to get the cantrip. And this is a matchup where every single card is going to matter because every one of Nick's threats, specifically Desecration Demon and Nightveil Spectre, are going to require a card on their own. You can't get away from him by playing Supreme Verdicts.
Yes.
And here he does the same trick again. Like, I'll play it, I'll draw a card. I was like, okay. And that Underworld Connections gets to live, which means they're both going to start drawing cards, and the dynamic of the match, or the game, changes dramatically. Because Jaws is going to start Sphinx's Revelationing, and Nick is going to start drawing cards, and we're going to see full grip versus full grip for possibly the rest of the game.
And we'll see if Jaws, like what last game we saw him in, he played 4 of the Mutavaults and got to activate them all.
So we see a Grey Merchant. In response to the trigger, we're going to War Leader's Helix it. So when it triggers, it's only for 2 and I gain 4 life beforehand. But that land's going to enter tap, so we're back at 20. Life totals are almost unchanged from the start of the game. And having your 7th land enter untapped, to me, says we're probably going to see a Revelation at the end of turn. Unless Nick plays something we really need to deal with. Only kind of did. We're going to Revelation for 4. So it looks like he did not hit another Revelation, which means Nick actually gets to take the best spell, and Jaws is going to have to draw spells this game. He does have the Is It Charm, which will help him filter into some of the big stuff. But what Nick is interested in is, I want to keep my Underworld Connections. And Jaws is like, nothing I can do about that. Nick says, I'm going to play a 6-6. Jaws is like, there's not a whole lot I can do about that. He can, and perhaps will, Mizzy Mortars and Is It Charmin, but I think it's just as likely he takes a couple hits beforehand to try and find a 1-for-1 answer.
Yes.
Probably trying to decide, do I spend 2 cards on that and go down a card? Do I Is It Charm looking for a better answer and go down a card? Because when you Is It card to draw and discard, you actually end up with 1 less card in your hand than you started with. Or do I wait? You have the syncopate, so if you wait, the only thing that's going to get worse is Nick's going to draw another card off Underworld Connections.
I think I saw another Underworld Connections in Nick's hand.
Yeah, so when I said Mono Black has a whole bunch of dead cards in their deck, that's only relevant if you draw them. That's another Underworld Connections. Like, I think he has a Bile-Blight in his hand, but that'll deal with a Mutavault, potentially. The Grey Merchant gets syncopated, and I would not be surprised to see Jaws Is It Charm in his turn. He doesn't. He'll just untap his lands and say, come on, Supreme Verdict, Detention Sphere, Sphinx's Revelation, there's a Detention Sphere. What do you point it at? The Connections or the Demon?
Connections.
Taps 3 mana, he hits.
Connections.
That's what Nick says. What are you pointing it at? Jaws is like, I don't know. There's Nick making sure we see him. And Jaws says, I'll take the Demon. So his plan is to not die and hope he draws a Sphinx's Revelation and it gets him the rest of the way. And you know, it very well might. That's one of the things about the Mono Black deck, is it can tear apart your hand, but it cannot affect the top of your library. So it doesn't have options to prevent you from drawing Sphinx's Revelation.
Yes.
It can, however, play Pack Rat, and then end of turn make 2 Pack Rats, and then next turn make 3 Pack Rats, and attack for 15.
That is the card that I lost to.
Lots of people lose to Pack Rat. So this is where Supreme Verdict and Detention Sphere, they're your best answers to Pack Rat.
Yes.
Mizzy Mortars actually does a fine job. So I think that's what we're going to see here. I'm going to overload Mizzy Mortars, and Nick doesn't have any reason to make Pack Rats, because that won't get around Mizzy Mortars. So it does suck to say, I'm going to spend 6 mana to destroy your 2-drop, but it makes that 2-drop all the way dead. And I think that's the last cards in Jaws' hand.
It looks like it.
So he reveals 3 lands. I think you take the Scryland because you desperately need to find something good. And then after this resolves, Nick's going to Hero's Downfall that Jace, and Nick is going to look like he's in a commanding position. Nick's going to start by drawing a card. Any threat you draw looks real good here. Bile-Blight, Underworld Connections. Is that a Lifebane zombie? No, is it a Bile-Blight? These cards don't actually kill Jaws, which is real good for Jaws.
Yes.
Oh, but he does have Pack Rat, which is a very fast clock if Jaws doesn't draw.
Deal with it very soon.
And he's got basically 3 cards in his deck that can deal with it. He's got Detention Sphere, Supreme Verdict, and Mizzy Mortars. Because if he plays any spot removals, Nick's going to be like, I'm going to make a ton of rats. And so we're now initiating Operation Make a Ton of Rats. And here we are with the 3/3s, which we can easily make 5/5s. We draw a Mutavault, and then there's 6/6s, and the game just ends. looks like Jaws is thinking about blocking one with a Mutavault. He does, so he takes only 6, which will, I don't know, it'll give him another turn to draw a Revelation or a Supreme Verdict. Perhaps he has the Revelation in hand, but then he would have done that before his Mutavault died. So I think we're just going to see him untap, or perhaps filter with an Is It Charm. And Nick is trying to decide, do I commit another threat to the board, or are these guys good enough? And I suspect he's going to decide these guys are good enough. He has a Pack Rat, an Underworld Connections, a Desecration Demon, a Grey Merchant, and a Bile-Blight in his hand. So Jaws' options are quite limited. If he doesn't have a card draw spell in hand right now, I don't think there's any one card that's going to get him out of this.
Neither do I. It's either gonna be multiple cards or Jaws just scoops.
He did just untap and scries. So now he's gonna Is It Charm into whatever he's scried into. Oh no, he's gonna 4-mana Divination into whatever he's scried into. He kept it, which means it probably deals with Pack Rat. 4-mana Supreme Verdict. So next turn, Nick is going to do the same thing, and Jaws is going to be in the same situation. But he's 1 card up from where he was last turn when he was in this situation. Nick says Desecration Demon, and that'll be good enough because if it gets a hit in, Grey Merchant will finish the job right on the spot. He's also going to play a Pack Rat, so now a single Detention Sphere doesn't solve the problem. A single Mizium Orders doesn't solve the problem. Supreme Verdict does, but we've already played 1, maybe 2 of those?
Maybe 2. No, I think it's only 1.
Okay, we played 2 Detention Spheres, 1 Mizium Orders. We're going to say Elspeth. Elspeth ticking up means you can sack 1 to the demon and you can block 2 rats and be something sort of like stable. Except that Nick has that Bile-Blight that he's had in his hand this whole time. So looks like we're partway through this game. We have that same pause that we talked about last time.
Yep.
Okay, well let me tell you how that game ended. I didn't see it, but I'm 90% sure Nick Delaney Bile-Blights those Elspeth tokens. He makes a rat, he Bile-Blights the Elspeth tokens, he makes a rat, he attacks for 12, and the game ends. None of the cards that we saw in Jaws' hand appear like they answered that line of play. So I'm going to tell you with 90% certainty that we're going to game 2 and Nick Delaney is up by 1. We'll know for sure when Jaws plays his Scryland before Nick plays his Scryland, but I'll tell you, that's what happened. So here we go. Jaws has his super secret method for beating the mono black deck, which we're going to see this game, and I'm really excited for. Let's do this. They're both looking at 6, and Jaws has shown us a little more of his hand than Nick was, and it was real land light. And yes, in fact, Jaws was on the play, which meant Nick did win last game. And Jaws plays his turn 2 Font of Fortunes. I believe that's Fortunes. The Courier's Capsule, that's an enchantment instead of an artifact, or as I like to call it, 4-mana Divination. Two mana, so we're going to see Pack Rat, and there's a Mutavault to back it up.
Yes.
Jaws draws the cards, trying to hit his land, and he does not, so he's going to discard. That was a real unfortunate play. Nick animates attacks for 4 damage, plays a land in Thought Season. We see Mizium Mortars, Revelation, War Leader's Helix, Faded Retribution, Azorius Charm, Syncopate, Elspeth. Nick says, there's a lot of gas there. None of it beats my Pack Rats.
not a lot that beats Pack Rat.
The blue-white control decks tended to be the best suited to beating it, because you have Supreme Verdict and, oh, right, Busy Mortars kills Pack Rat. He didn't have the mana up to make another. And he misses his land drop. So now if Jaws can start hitting his land drops, he will survive for a while. The Thoughtseize from the previous turn means he's still at 7 even though he misses his land drop. He Is It Charms that Mutavault, and he is creating a land parity situation, and he draws out of it first. Alright, both players hit their lands. Jaws hits Detention Sphere, but he doesn't have white mana, which means he has an answer for the next whatever happens, but he can't cast it yet.
Yes.
And there you go. There's the Hallowed Fountain, which means he's showing War Leader's Helix, Azorius Charm, but that got discarded, and he's going to have enough mana to syncopate anything, including a Thoughtseize. I guess not including a Thoughtseize. Nick says Erebos, which tends to be very powerful against this deck because not only can they not War Leader's Helix or Sphinx's Revelation out of your damage tools, but now you can start turning your life into hit points at an effective
rate.
In an effective fashion. Thank you. At an effective rate. The Detention Sphere on the Erebos says, we're going to continue not doing anything for a while, and I hope you like it. Nick's now hit his 5th land, so everything in his deck is unlocked. He's got another Desecration Demon in hand. It looks like 2 Grey Merchants, so he's going to be able to play a steady stream of creatures. Jaws starts by playing Elspeth, getting rid of the demon, which is my favorite line to do with Elspeth in that situation, because if you tick her up, then you lose her to Bile-Blight. Whereas if you send her down, worst case scenario, she trades. She traded for a card. Now she's going to go up to 2 and make some dudes, but those dudes will not protect her from Lifebane Zombie, which means unless Jaws has a removal spell, we're going to be able to get Elspeth off the board. That's probably what he'll do first. Play his land, I'm going to get Elspeth off the board, and Jaws says no. I'm not sure how he said no. War Leader's Helix is how he says no. Hero's Downfall, the Elspeth, 3 soldier tokens is going to be tricky enough. And now you've got this nice thing with Jaws, where you've got your counter mana up, you've got 3 power in play, which means your opponent is actually on a clock. And as the blue-white control player, when you put your opponent on the clock, things are going to go well for you. Nick's dice fell over. He's actually at 13, not 20. The Grey Merchant was good enough to make it so that Jaws' 3 1/1 creatures won't be able to attack, which means the board is at parity and we're back to playing on the hand and stack level and we're no longer playing on the board level. This matchup is a polar opposite to the Dredge versus Green-White Enchantress matchup that we saw last game. Now they're trying to figure out what his life total was at. They find it is at 13. And Erebos is 1 devotion away from turning into a dude. When it turns into a dude, it'll do an effective job of eating 1 creature each turn. But for now, he's just going to pay some life, draw some cards. And I heard Jaws mention this before. That's not that bad. You play Ralzeric, you shoot him down to 8, next turn you can shoot him down to 5. You have Turn and Burns and War Leader's Helixes in your deck. But for now, we're just going to Detention through the Erebos. Nick does have another Grey Merchant in his hand, which means he will be able to gain some life. Which he looks like he's going to need because there's going to be an army of 1/1s bearing in on Nick for the rest of the game. Hero's Downfall on the Elspeth. That's great. You still have 5 1/1s to deal with.
Yeah.
Of course, Grey Merchant for 4.
Puts it back at 13. 3. 2. Jaws takes it. Then puts him at 11.
11 to 13. We've already had 2 Grey Merchants hit play, so there aren't a whole lot more of those. So Jaws has more of the direct damage in his deck remaining than Nick does. Oh, Detention Sphere on the 2 crashes in for 5, sends Nick to 8. Nick needs to draw an answer. He probably doesn't have Bile Blight in his deck anymore. There's a Demon, which is all well and good, but Jaws is going to be able to sack a creature and get in for 4, sack a creature and get in for 3, sack a creature and get in for 2, and that makes 9. Alternatively, he'll just put it on top of his library. Still only hits for 4 because one of the guys was blocked, but now he has not only enough power to sack a guy and get in, he also has the Mutavault. He's going to play a pair of 6/6s, which is going to die to Jaws on board because he can sacrifice 2 of his dudes to tap them down, animate his Mutavault, get him for 4.
And that's game.
That's game, which means they're going to be going to game 3. Nick did not have the volume of Thoughtseizes and Duresses that we typically see.
Yes.
There's a very reasonable chance that that's because he didn't draw those cards. It's similarly likely that Nick decided that blue-white was poorly representative in our local meta enough that he would be better off having more removal spells.
Yes. But it didn't seem to work out for him.
Not this game, and I would be shocked if he doesn't. He definitely has the 4 Thoughtseize, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't have at least 2 Duress, but it might not be the whole 4.
Yes.
So now we're going to see game 3 of our top 8, Nick Delaney versus Jagjit. Mono black versus blue white red control, and the mono black deck is on the play, which means we have the very real threat of turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Pack Rat, and that beats a lot of decks. As is customary, we're going to play our first couple of lands tapped. We're going to look at our library for a little while, and we'll think about playing spells later. There's the turn 2 Pack Rat, which Nick has had every game.
No. He's had it for these 2 games.
Okay, he didn't have it game 1?
No.
Okay.
Game 1, it was turn...
Right,
5 or 6?
Turn 4, he played Underworld Connections. Right, that was the first spell game 1. There's the Dress. So we know he has a non-zero number, which was kind of a given. Here, Jaws needs to decide, do I Is-It Charm it? Perhaps Negate, maybe he has Negate in his hand, but I think Is-It Charm is what we're looking at.
Yes.
I think he's going to opt to just Is-It Charm the rat. Yes, indeed. Because Nick had enough mana to make it a 2/2, but that'll still die to Is-It Charm. So he shows Revelation, War Leader's Helix, Supreme Verdict, land. So we know he's going to hit his next several land drops, and he's going to kill some creatures. And hopefully he's going to scry into a card that does something. Azorius Charm somewhat counts as a card that does something.
Yes.
And here, Nick he missed a land drop. He tried to slam Underworld Connections when he got the chance, but Syncopate says no to that. There's another one on top of my deck. Can I play it? And since Jaws had to draw that counter spell last turn, and then it'll land this turn, he's trying to Azorius Charm into either an Is-It Charm or Syncopate or a Negate. It doesn't hit it. We have an Underworld Connections. Ouch. There's an Elspeth. When your opponent only has 3 mana, you hit the land, which means it's not black though, so you still can't Hero's Downfall and draw a card. So best case scenario, you have Hero's Downfall, it still puts you down a card from where you want to be. If you don't have Bile Blight in your deck, then you can't meaningfully make up the board state from your opponent getting 6/6 or heaven forbid 9/1/1 creatures from this Elspeth.
Yes. Especially in a mono black deck, you'd think he'd be running Vile Blights.
Well, we know he main boards Bile Blights, but you take them out against the deck where your only legal targets are Mutavaults and Soldier Tokens. Nick is going to play a demon, and that demon is not going to do very much. It's either just going to blow up from an Elspeth or it's going to get tapped down from soldiers. And you can see the look on Nick's face. I don't think he has a plan. Because as the Elspeth player, when you get to say, send her up to 7, attack for 5, make 3 dudes, that's a commanding position to be in. Nick draws a land, which is nice because he was a little cut on black mana. Oh, he does have the Bile Blight. Which means if Jaws doesn't have any way to interact with this, he kills the tokens and then the Desecration Demon kills the Elspeth. Gonna Steam Augury, but there's almost no way you hit the card you're looking for. Because you want an Azorius Charm. They're arguing over exactly how Steam Augury works. He did not run into anything that's going to keep his Elspeth alive. So what you might see here is Hammer of Perforos verse 4, where Nick will begrudgingly give him the hammer and we'll see if he can beat it. He doesn't go quite so deep. And Hammer is what I was talking about. Jaws' plan for how do I beat the Thoughtseizes and the Duresses is I'm just going to play more threats so that I have more relevant top decks. And Hammer is a big part of how he goes about that. And I'm really surprised, excited to see Hammer of Perforos in a control deck. Because that is a favorite card among several people I'm close to, and it's awesome to see it cropping up in the only archetype that it did not yet belong. Supreme Verdict answers the Desecration Demon.
Nick plays another Desecration Demon with another Mutavault.
And Jaws has 8 lands in play. I think he got the hammer to his hand, but he only has 1 source of red mana, which means he can't actually play it. No, Supreme Verdict it away again. There's a chance that Nick just animates all his mana lands and bashes for 6 while the bashing's good. He'll draw cards, which he's been doing all game. He'll duress Jaws, which means if he bashes with the rest of his dudes, it's only 4 of them. He sees 2 War Leaders Helixes as his option, so he takes 1 of them. And that might motivate you not to animate your mana lands.
4th Mutavault?
That is the 4th Mutavault, which means if he ever draws a Pack Rat, he doesn't have to go deep on it at all, and he can just make them 5/5s. Nick animates 2 of his dudes. Jaws is deciding whether or not to shoot one of them. If you do, that makes you really soft to a Night Veil Spectre that's going to come up later. I think that was Font. Yes. So 4-mana Divination is just fine when you have 9 lands in play. He'll draw 2 cards. One of them is Sphinx's Revelation, which means Jaws' empty hand staring down a Underworld Connections is much less of a shortcoming than it previously looked like it was going to be. I didn't see what the other card was. I think it was a War Leader Helix, but don't quote me on that. Now, Nick has the option to keep drawing cards and keep grinding, which he's going to take. He has 3 Mutavaults still in play, and every one of those cards demands an answer. Lightbane Zombie's gonna take a look at my hand. He's like, sure, I have Hammer and Sphinx's Revelation. Nick's like, dang it. I'll attack for 2. Jaws is trying to decide, do I Revelation for 3? Because if not, I might just block that Mutavault with my Mutavault. You do eventually need to get those Mutavaults off the table, and a big part of why you play Mutavault is to deal with them. But not this turn. This turn, that extra life and that extra card is going to be worth taking this damage.
Yes.
Plays another vault, says pass. He knows he's going to draw 4 cards this turn. I'm sorry, 8 cards this turn. How many cards is he drawing this turn? 8. He's drawing 8 cards this turn. The Thoughtseize on the stack, which means Nick is going to take the best of the 8. Which my hunch is that means Nick's taking a Sphinx's Revelation, but we'll see. Hammer, Supreme Verdict, Fated Retribution, Sphinx's Revelation, Land, Is It Charmed, Detention Sphere. Nick says, I'll take that Sphinx's Revelation. Jess says, yeah, I think you will. So now we have an Is It Charmed, which is going to be able to deal with 1 Mutavault. A Fated Retribution, which means that Nick can't get crazy with a bunch of Mutavaults. And a Hammer of Perforos, which is actually going to get 1 red mana, get the 2nd red mana next turn, and then he'll start going crazy with it.
Yes.
Mutavault is a very powerful card, but it's a 2/2, and 2/2s lose to giant armies of 3/3s.
Yes.
And since Hammer can be activated as an instant, that means he'll only have to dedicate 3 mana to it at sorcery speed, and then he'll be able to keep up counter spells, removal spells, and draw spells for the rest of the game while still dedicating his dudes. Nick sees he's tapped out, so now's my opportunity to attack for 9. I've got you down to 15. I don't know how I'm going to do the rest of the damage, but I know I want to make that number as small as possible.
What Jaws has in his hand can and probably might win him the game.
The detention sphere on the Underworld connection says that Nick's grinding power is going to come to a halt. He has to be real careful about how many Mutavaults he animates because his opponent has an instant speed wrath effect in his hand. So he'll be real conservative. He'll just attack for 3, get it charmed, and I think we're going to see, I guess Grey Merchant doesn't do anything right now. So I think we'll see, I have no idea what we'll see. Pack Rat? It's going to be another Lifebane Zombie? Underworld connections. So the grinding continues.
Just when Jaws thought he had ended it, it keeps on going.
And being able to draw a card every turn, good. Doubling the amount of life drain that comes from your Grey Merchants is also pretty important, because we know he has at least 1 Grey Merchant in his hand. And that might be his only way to get damage through the rest of this game. He says, Pack Rat, and he has 3 Mutavaults to back it up, but again, Fated Retribution will prevent him from doing anything too crazy with those Pack Rats. Jaws untaps with 12 mana in play. So this is the point where he gets to start doing whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He's going to start by detention sphering the Underworld connections, which I think Nick had another one in his hand, but I'm not certain.
Yes.
Nick smartly did not dedicate more than one of them to the board, because you want each one of them to require their own detention sphere. Jaws plays his land untapped, goes to 11, and here's the Hammer. Now I think Hammer only takes 1 red to activate, which means that Steam Vents is going to be able to to do that. I'm not certain about that, but
No,
we'll see
it
if he does it.
is 1 colorless, 1 red to activate.
It's definitely 3 mana to activate. Let's look this card up. Nick scries. If he has an Underworld Connections, he's probably going to play it. He'll start by attacking with Packrat. This is smart because if Jaws animates his Mutavault to block, then you can animate your own Packrats, or your own Mutavaults to make your Packrat bigger, and then you at least get Jaws' Mutavault off the board when he Faded Retributions. Okay, so Hammer Perforos is double red to play, single red to activate, but it is 3 mana to play and 3 mana to activate. So, end of turn. Oh, that wasn't end of turn. Pardon. Instead, he's going to Supreme Verdict and he gets 2 creatures. He gets the Packrat and he gets the Desecration Demon, which is something that Nick never really wants to let happen, but you don't have a whole lot of opportunities when you can't afford to go deep on Packrat. There's Grey Merchant number 1. Looks like Jaws is letting that resolve, but he's going to kill it in response to the trigger. He'll turn and burn it, yes. So then the Devotion to black when the ability resolves is 0. He shows Faded Retribution. I didn't see what that other card was.
Lifeline Zombie.
I mean in Jaws' hand. Jaws untaps, he still hasn't made a Golem. The Golem tokens are colorless, which means they do block Lifeband Zombie. I'm sorry, they're artifacts, which means they do block Lifeband Zombie. Mutavault is colorless, but does not block Lifeband Zombie. Nick still has the 3 Mutavaults, but Jaws still has the Faded Retribution, so those cards are staring each other down. And Jaws will sacrifice a red source in order to eat Lifeband Zombie. Nick says, sure, I'll drain you for 2. I think Jaws was considering Faded Retribution, but I don't think that was the right play, and he opted not to make it. Now he has a Syncopate in his hand. So the next thing Nick tries to do isn't going to work. He's going to get an attack for 2, but it would just be blocked by a Golem, so it wouldn't be terribly fruitful. So I think Nick feels, if I'm going to make any headway, I have to animate some number of Mutavaults. So that he has to Faded Retribution, but all he'll do is block a Mutavault with a Golem token. So how do I make Jaws use the cards in hand and not just beat me with what's in play? I think he passes the turn. Jaws chooses not to make any Golems because he's still hoping he'll draw Sphinx's Revelation and the game will just end. There he does. Nick says, okay, good enough for me. So there's the hammer. It's not a card you typically see in the deck, but it's definitely there, and that's the kind of thing it can do. When you hit the hyper late game, it's going to just make a Golem every time. And
yeah.
Most decks can't deal with that effectively.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Jaws, who made it to the top 4. The top 4 opted to split this tournament, so that was Baldeep, Dane Vennewitz, Woody Sikowski, and Jaws. So congratulations to the 4 of them. They each get, I believe, 25 and 2, I think it's 45 and 2 packs. They get 2 points towards the Bellingham City Champs tournament. Actually, I think they have to roll to determine who gets first and who gets second. And they get 5, 3, 2, and 2 points towards the City Champs tournament, respectively. And that's for the June City Champs tournament, which will be taking place at Wizards Library. For this month, May, our tournament again is on the 17th, not the 10th. So if you show up tomorrow hoping to battle, we're very sorry. I'll be here to tell you how sorry I am and to let you know when it's going to be. But again, it's going to be on the 17th.
Yes.
So today at our FNM, we got to see some constellation decks, which is exciting. It's really nice when the new keyword from the set is relevant. Not, I guess, terribly frequently, but I always have these fears that the small sets, and Born of the Gods kind of contributed to this, that the small sets just aren't going to create any relevant changes to the format, and especially when you already have 6 sets in the format. When you get the 7th one, or when M15 comes out and it's the 8th one, their contribution to the pool a lot of times doesn't meaningfully change the way that people build decks until rotation in October. So I'm glad to see that's not the case. People are playing Journey to Nyx cards, and these cards are doing things.
Yeah. In certain decks, though, Journey into Nyx, you're not seeing as many cards from Journey into Nyx as you are seeing Theros.
That's true. Our 2 best decks, Mono Black Midrange and Blue White X Control, didn't get a whole lot of new toys. I think Blue White got the new Oblivion Ring, so now if they want to play 8 Oblivion Rings, they can, and they got Deicide. But neither of those are necessary, neither of those are really all that mainboardable, and I guess the Boogie Monsters are going to continue to be the Boogie Monsters.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, congratulations to our top 4. Again, that was Baldeep, Dane, Woody, and Jaws. I'm Brad. This is Logan, and we've been real happy to have you. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.